Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Roderick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever's in Discord and G+, so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Do you hear that right, Nathan?
Pardon? Are you talking to me?
I said I'm off today, so I get to participate a little more.
Okay, that's good to hear. Very pleased to
It
hear
gets a little frustrating when I'm working because I can't. I gotta just listen, but that's good too. By the way, kudos to you guys. The last few shows were great teachings.
What, hanging around forever for Hoymar to come up? Is that what you mean?
No, just the last few shows I've just been able to really listen to. Very concise teaching on a lot of things. Forget about the Hoymar thing. Oh, but that was great too. He had to confess.
Hey, Brian.
Hey Nathan, hey Nate, hey everyone in Discord. How are things?
Good. Very good.
You couldn't get him to repeat it though, Nathan, when he said he assumed the flat Earth.
Did repeat. I said that to you in the chat comments. He did repeat it. He just didn't repeat it for me.
He didn't say it like he did the first time, though. It was clear.
Yeah,
Is that
did.
one of those? Sorry.
He said it once clearly. Clearly enough for it to be edited out.
Correct.
Is that one of those situations where one of our opposition claims to be pre-assuming that the Earth is flat, just so they can avoid the fact that they, how do I put it, that they have just spoken about something that can only work on a flat Earth? Is it?
Yes, that's
is
correct.
It one of those situations?
Yes,
yeah.
Correct. He's requiring parallels, and once it was pointed out to him by Adam that, well, what are you doing? How are you doing that? What's it in reference to? He had to concede that he was assuming a flat Earth because he's acquiring an elevation angle. So you've assumed a flat Earth because that's how you've got to do this. So they all find themselves in the same exact boat every time they get to this particular part of the discussion. Well, how are you going to get an elevation angle? Well, I'm going to assume a flat Earth to get it. Then I'm going to move on with my sphere belief after violating it in several different ways and basing the belief that I'm on a sphere on the angle I've just taken from a flat plane.
You think that would spark something in their brain, you know? But nothing.
Well, tangent planes and a globe Earth, even though a tangent to a circle is a part of geometry, tangent planes and a globe Earth can't coexist in the same space. You can't have a plane that you use to do everything on and then claim a globe. You know, if it's a globe, then there won't be any need for a tangent plane. You'll be able to do these processes on the curved surface. You won't have a need for a plane surface, a horizontal surface. So the two can't coexist. You can't claim a tangent plane where you do all your actual real world measurements and then say it's a globe. You just can't do those two things.
I agree, and you need tangent plane. You need a plane to build on. I was explaining this to my youngest son yesterday with a basketball. I said, no matter how you bring that down, you will never be able to build cities on this basketball. It's over.
Yeah, well, the problem is that if you measure on a plane, especially if you're measuring large distances, hundreds and thousands of miles, like you do with the marine sextant, if you're measuring those kind of horizontal distances and you're using a plane, a tangent plane for that, those measurements aren't going to just transform onto a curved surface. You have to mathematically assert a radius value to do anything, and then you have to try and wrap the whole thing around the curved surface. But that's only your horizontal. It's what becomes of that horizontal afterwards, when that horizontal, which is part of an elevation angle, becomes a circle of equal altitude. Then you do two more of them, that's three of them. It just becomes absolutely farcical. The distance of the horizontal distance necessary, squared horizontal distance, let's just say necessary, that you would have to have for three circles of equal altitude. It's just impossible to transform back that onto a globe. Measurement wise, it's just the whole thing is just farcical, because you could take maybe one distance along the baseline of an elevation angle and use a radius value and transform that onto a spherical surface, but that's all you could do. Other than that, when it gets to the circles of equal altitude, it's over. Now, I won't go into why it's over, because I don't want to give away, give too much away, but it's completely over at that point. And I don't know why they don't.
Well, yeah, but what spherical surface? That's the problem.
But see, there you go. As I said, they have to assume a radius value. And where does the radius come from?
Yeah, but even where do they put that? Do they put it on the Earth, or do they put it in a?
They put it in orthographic maths.
A graphic. In a graphics, right?
Well, orthographic maths, orthographic geometry on a page. That's where they put it.
Exactly.
You see, all angular measurements, and I'm going to keep saying this, and you're going to get bored of me, I'd say. All angular measurements are measurements of perspective. So, for their radius to exist mathematically, then that took measurements of flat out measurements of perspective to be back engineered from, to come up with the radius value, right? Not though even the ones that they assert with their ellipsoid, because they have no history for where those two different radii came from. But their basic 3959, which is not even correct, it's 3958, and some numbers after a decimal point. Where that came from is a back engineering of flat earth elevation angles to Polaris. What's an elevation angle? It's a measurement of perspective over a horizontal plane. So, if you're going to be asserting a radius value, then you're basically stating that perspective has to exist. But perspective can't exist on a globe if the reason that Polaris drops in the sky is because you're going back down over a geometric curve. Because the whole point of that geometric curve is a hijack perspective. So angles can't exist on a globe. They can't exist, because there's no perspective on a globe Earth. There's no perspective in globe Earth mathematics. So when Polaris drops in the sky, or something becomes too small to see, that can only be Earth curve. It cannot be angles. It cannot be perspective.
Yeah, it's weird you phrasing it like that, because that's their claim in the first instance. It's just you've spent so long dealing with anti-flat earthers that you're now having to reassert what the globe Earth claim is in the first instance, because the globe Earth's claiming that things move towards the horizon and Earth curve will block them. Now that is in essence a hijacking of perspective, but we're having to reiterate that to people who've gone full circle. They've said that the Earth's a sphere and that the horizon's Earth curve and it's blocking boats and buildings. Then we've debunked it, so they've said that it's not. It's actually a refracted mirage of the horizon into the distance. So typically there's a jet plane going over or a helicopter. Just bear with me a sec. Can you hear that?
Only barely.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah. Great timing. I've got my window open. Can't be bothered to get it to shut it.
Well, you won't need to. I mean, it wasn't even noticeable until you started pointing it out.
Oh, was it not? My mic was definitely picking it up. I've got good rejection mic, so it's out towards the side where the window is, and that's where the mic should be rejecting all background noise. But yeah, they've gone full circle, so they've come back to asserting that they've got Earth curve, but they can't because they've already relinquished it in refraction. But to make corrections, they need geometry, and that geometry isn't perspective. But when they're making an angular measurement of Polaris drop into the horizon, that's what you're describing as a perspective effect. It's an angular reduction. So they're screwed six ways from Sunday at the moment, Brian. It's just unusual to hear you having to paraphrase back the fact that they claim they've got Earth curve, because that's essentially what you're having to explain to them, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're claiming that the reason that Polaris drops in the sky as you move south away from it, from its GP position, is because you're going back and down over physical Earth curve, then that means perspective doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And angles don't exist.
Exactly.
But if you are... Sorry, go on, Nathan.
Well, I was just going to say that that's the movement of the protractors. When you say angles don't exist, they do, because they'll still say 1 degree every 69 miles, right? But what they mean is a twisting of the protractor that you're stood on, i.e. the protractor's just the ball Earth, and they're twisting it round 1 degree. But it's not an angle measurement, because you can't get an angle from the curve of the protractor, i.e. the curve of the globe Earth with a physical horizon blocking your view, but a twisting of the protractor, and they say that 1 degree of twist is cause for the Polaris that you're describing to drop it towards the horizon.
Well, no, it's actually worse than that, because all angular measurements are measurements of perspective, basically. So, perspective can't exist on the globe Earth. You know, it's your physical movement away and down over a curved surface that causes Polaris to drop in the sky within their paradigm. So angles can't exist and perspective can't exist within that paradigm. They can't coexist. You know, it's like, well, we can have a little angle here. No, you can't. You know, if you're measuring the angular size of something, or you're measuring an angular drop or rise of something like a celestial body, you can't do that and claim a globe. Can't do that.
Right.
Because
I remember this taking a good
exist.
chunk of time to get, because QE explained it with conspiracy cats when he was doing the Blackpool Swan. And he was explaining that the angular size that he was describing in his explanation wasn't possible unless you're on a flat plane. Now, I didn't get it until much later, till the elevation angle argument. Then that cemented his point in my mind. But yeah, that was an example of that. The moment you start asserting a perspective claim or an angular size claim, you're doing that on a flat Earth. There's no other way. You can't have that on a globe. It's just that simple. Are you right, Brian?
Well, yeah, but I'm being even more extreme about it. It's like it can't exist because perspective can't exist, because the globe Earth is a mathematical back engineering of perspective measurements, angular measurements, across a flat plane. So no angular measurement can ever exist. No perspective can never exist. You know, visual effects can't exist on a globe Earth. Can't. All that can exist is a mathematical globe Earth. That's
right.
it.
And that's because globe Earth doesn't exist in a visual manner. The mathematics for a globe Earth exists in an orthographic manner, which isn't a visual way of dealing with anything. So you're right. When it comes to looking at stuff and seeing stuff, it's like, well, you don't do that on a globe. You remove yourself from your observation. You put yourself in Muppet view, so you see the side of your own head and the target in the same frame. Well, that's Muppet vision or orthographic view. That's not seeing stuff. You know, because a target won't change in size. It'll be 100 foot at any distance. So that's definitely not representative of how we see things. And that's a globe Earth. It just isn't representative of how we see things. It can't be. It's Muppet vision. It's orthographic view, not
I
perspective
like
view.
Brian's word, farcical.
Yeah, farcical is a good word for it, Neil. You know, Nathan is 100% correct. It's like, that's the point. Everything that the only way to show you what some observation would look like on the globe Earth is to put you into orthographic view, where you're looking at, as Nathan, as you often say, the side of your own head, looking at something, and you're seeing an orthographic view, which is a view that can only ever be shown on paper or on a computer screen. You don't see that. It's impossible to see orthographically in the real world, if you know what I mean. You can only ever see in perspective view. You know what I mean? You have your front-on perspective and whatever is at the peripheral. That's what you have 24/7. You don't have orthographic view of yourself or anything else, you know, that kind of it.
Yeah, you'll have people come on and explain that they have, and if they can only describe it to you, but they can't, so they'll draw it out. But it's definitely seen. I remember that guy that came on.
Yeah, lighthouse in a boat, and he's describing how he's actually been on the boat going towards the lighthouse. It's like, well, okay, give it us in the breakdown for the globe. And he's like, well, if you were to draw it, you draw your man on the left, you draw your lighthouse on the right. Like, why? Wouldn't it just be you seeing something? You wouldn't be in the shot. You might see your feet. That's about it.
Anyway, as ridiculous as that sounds, there are Globers that presented that idea that if you had such a optical system, you could prove these things.
The effect disappears.
So, yeah, so you would need, I mean, you essentially need an optic the size of the scale that you're trying to view. So let's say you wanted to view the sun in its original size, you would need the optic to be the exact same diameter as the sun. Or if you wanted to see an orthographic view of the side of the Earth, you would need an optic that's the exact same diameter as the field of view of the Earth that you want to get. So, you know, you're talking thousands upon thousands of miles wide optic. Now, of course, they just posited this idea. If I had such an optic, it would allow me to see these things. Therefore, the Earth's a globe.
Yeah, that checks out.
No, but it doesn't, because the moment you translate orthographic view into optical view, we've done it. I had Ranty go and get a side profile view. No, he didn't have optics the size of the observation. But by the same token, it wouldn't make any difference either way, because the effect they're claiming is Earth curve disappears when you look at side view. So in the case of these wind turbines, you've got these wind turbines claimed to be falling around Earth curve. They're not. They're just getting smaller into the distance. But that's the claim. Earth curve's getting in the way. Okay, let's have a look at them in side profile then. They'll still be curving away. They'll be curving. From left to right, you'll see them curve as they curve behind the curve of the Earth, which is in reality just a perspective effect when you're looking directly at something. But in Muppet vision, you can claim that the target hasn't changed in size, therefore, when it's smaller to your view, that's actually Earth curve getting in the way. Well, no, not the case if you look into actual side view with actual optics. You see a perfectly lined up set of wind turbines. None of them are curving.
Yeah.
At all.
When I say that checks out, I mean their way of thinking. That checks out.
Yeah, so the gambit that they appeal to is that, okay, so if you do take it from a side view from an optic, right, all that optic's going to be smaller than the field of view. So the optic's going to have an angular field of view. You need an optic without an angular field of view, so it need to be direct.
Right.
In other words, one pixel would represent one parallel line perpendicular to the field of view that you have. So if you have a 1,000-mile stretch,
not possible.
You would need a 1,000-mile linear optic, right?
Right, but even
one
if you
for
had
one,
that, you couldn't have
which
it.
doesn't
It
exist,
never
of
work.
course.
You'd never have any depth of field. Regardless of the size of optics, it's always going to give you a perspective view regardless. It's never not going to give you a perspective view. Now, what you're saying is, but the perspective view of the thing that you're making an observation of and comparing to the Earth curve calculator, if that was viewed inside on with massive aperture, yeah, okay. But then you wouldn't have the effect. You wouldn't see anything curving around the curve of the Earth, because that's just a perspective effect. It only does it when the
thing is,
targets do not change.
they do have systems like this that exist on a small scale. and they're used for manufacturing. So like machine parts and stuff. So they manufacture the machine part and then they have to scan it to see if it's in the tolerances. So they have an optic that's doesn't have an angular field of view. It has a direct field of view. So the light passes through, it doesn't change angle, or at least that's the principle. So it looks, when they take the photo, the exact dimensions that it exists in reality. And of course, the camera has to be the exact dimensions of the object. However, even in that case, when you look at the images taken with that, compared to images taken with an angular field of view, you still see a little bit of warping. So still at that, where they're trying to make it perfect, to measure machine parts, which would be perfect, they still have some warping.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And part of that reason is you can't filter out the off-angle light, right? Well, because light is still coming, so the far left portion of the object is still shooting light into the far right portion of the optic.
It's just, generally speaking, stuff does get smaller as it's further away from you. So if you render a model like that, it looks weird. So coincidentally, I did see somebody do exactly that with some really upscale, very expensive laser light modelling equipment. So a big rig that you hold. I say hold, it is handheld, but really it isn't. It's enormous. And then you go around your part. And in the case of the thing that I saw them doing it with, it was an engine. And they wanted to design an intake for an engine that never had an aftermarket intake made for it. So in order to get it all lined up, the quickest and easiest, probably not the cheapest way to do it, was to just do a 3D model. So they scan it and they're going around it, every little part, right up close, all the rest of it. Hundreds of different cameras all at once. And once they presented the model, you look at it and go, wow, it looks really weird. Well, why? Well, because there's no depth of field, right? Stuff further away isn't smaller. So it looks strange. Because it is strange, because the stuff shrinks if it's further away. It doesn't matter if it's 3 inches further away or 3 miles further away. It gets smaller. That's how the world presents itself. So you can never have an orthographic view with a dimension that doesn't change. This 3-inch dimensions, 3 inches from all aspects that you rotate the model. Okay, yeah, that works in computer terms. In fact, it's probably a far simpler thing to process than completely rendering it as though it was real with ray tracing as you're describing the light that's not coming off at the right angles. Yeah, all that sort of stuff is just to try and make stuff look smaller as it's further away, rather than everything remaining the same angular size. Well, remaining the same angular size is not the accurate description of what they do when it's orthographic view. It isn't angular.
Right, and in order to experience such a thing, you would have to be able to experience points in free space, right? So imagine like a floating cloud point computer simulation render before it renders the graphics. Now, not the final graphical output that you see on the screen, but the actual floating data points in the system. So in other words, you'd need to be able to see the matrix from within the matrix from the coder's perspective, which goes well in turn where you have this idea of a subjective reality, right? You're the subjective experiencer, but you're also the programmer. So you could see the simulation from within the program itself. So essentially, whether they realize it or not, it's a pseudo attempt at claiming to have God's perspective of reality.
It is. It's God's perspective because it's a perspective detached from your own being in a methodology that doesn't include depth of field. So it's not a physical experience that you can ever encounter. And yet, it's weird, you're describing this stuff with you call it just seeing the program code, the float point, whatever that means. I know exactly what you mean. Pre-rendering, when the code's in there with all the inches values or centimetre values or millimetre values for the component all lined up before it's gone into a two-dimensional rendering on a screen, because only at that point can it make sense with all the values matching what's being presented to you. Now, that doesn't render as an image at all, does it? Because as soon as you do, you're putting it into a two-dimensional flat plane and presenting three-dimensional items in that two-dimensional plane. So again, it won't represent what is truly values that don't change. They stay the same actual size regardless of how you're orientating the image because there is no orientation when you're in the system pre-rendering. It's just these are the values. Well, you can't see the world in that way. It's impossible. Like you can't see the world in the way the Earth curve maths presents. It's impossible. You can't see the side of your own head. You can't see targets that don't change in size with distance.
Yeah, all that data is rendered from a point of view. So the computer picks a point of view, or you pick a point of view, and it renders it to that point of view. And you can only ever see it in that instance and from that point of view, which is in a weird way how we see the world. We all see it from our perspective, from wherever we are at the particular moment in time.
Yep, with perspective and depth
Farcical.
of field. Sorry, thought you were done. My bad.
Good morning and happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July to all of you Americans, and good morning to you.
We have freedom from the sphere.
Well, from the British.
Same thing.
No, that came from Rome.
Now we got to get free from
The
China.
British sphere of influence.
Hey, I'm not taking
Well,
credit for that.
speaking
as a
of
Brit.
that,
No. I mean,
I
I'm not
think I
Circular
figured it
orbit,
out,
but
Neil.
I'm not taking credit for that. No way. That's come from Rome.
Yeah, but you're 20% black, so you can't even represent the British.
Yeah, I'm on.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Hoymar agreeing with us in that little short clip.
There's loads more
Lovely.
meat on that bone. I'll listen to it again. That comes out. Was it Thursday's show or was it Friday's? I think it was Thursday's.
Friday.
Was it
Friday.
Friday's?
Yeah.
Okay, so that comes out tomorrow, Tuesday, on the second channel. Or members have already had it, so there's no point plugging it to the members because they've probably seen it if they're going to. But yeah, there's loads more meat on it. So I almost did it today. I was listening back and tempted to edit it out, but the kids were making too much noise, so I couldn't concentrate. But I will after it's been released because it's easier to just go to YouTube and chunk out the bit that I want rather than taking it out by rendering it out. I won't bore you with the details. It's easier once it's published to just take a section of the video and download it straight to my iPad and then edit it, which is what I will do. Because there's an earlier section which ended up being quite concise. You know, when you end up repeating something 25 times or whatever it ended up being with Hoymar, it typically, because they won't concede, means there's no concise point being made, because if you allow the opponent's response to come through, which is either non sequitur or, you know, claiming there's been a straw man used, whatever they're doing that's not conceding, it doesn't make the point clear. Whereas there was one particular section where he asks me, well, why can I not claim I'm making an angle correction from a curved line? Almost in those words. Again, because I've been sat there for several hours, bored out of my brain, waiting for him to arrive, I was carried on playing the video game that was up. So I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I've been using the one of the old video games I had from when I first got the computer to benchmark it, make it silent again, basically, which I've now done, and I'm very happy with that. But it was still playing, and again in that particular section, I lose focus on the game when he's asking me that ridiculous question about why he can't get an angle from a curve. And I end up getting hit by a car, so it's like another particular great moment where the character's getting run over when I go, what do you mean you don't understand why you can't get an angle from a curve? It's just, you know, it's the 22nd time I've told you. You're obviously stupid.
I could not believe when he said that, even asked that question. But what I like about the live is you can almost anticipate him getting ready to say, well, I assume a flat earth. Love the live parts.
Well, they don't understand they don't understand nor see the contradiction, but they know there is a contradiction because all angle measurements come from the equatorial plane, which is flat.
Yes.
So that's why angles work. But when they take it to the surface, it doesn't work. And this is where they get stuck and they have to double speak because you cannot get an angle from a curved surface.
Right, and they try and project the failing part of their argument onto you. So in this instance, he would describe how you've got a bent line to the horizon in no uncertain terms. And when that becomes a problem, he would say, so you're saying that you can't measure a point in the distance called the horizon if it's refracted. It's like, no, you're claiming it is refracted. I'm saying bent lines don't give you angles. but he's projecting his failing section of the argument onto me like it's my problem to deal with. Blue Marble did the same thing.
They all do.
But what I heard with Hoymar was something I hear a lot of. I only heard that one clip you put out, Nathan, that 8-minute clip, where they will assert a flat plane, and then when they're questioned about it, they say that they were assuming a flat Earth, as in they were begging the question of a flat Earth. It's like it's a way of taking away the concession that they needed a flat plane. They weren't even speaking about globe and globe celestial navigation. They were just talking about a flat Earth at the time, just pre-assuming it.
Yeah,
You know,
at the point
they
that they were
trivialise it,
describing their globe
trivialise
faith
it,
and justifying their globe faith and going through how they would do it with their globe faith intact, at the point that they need to assume a flat plane, they make it out that, oh, well, I was playing devil's advocate for your argument and explaining how it would work on a flat plane. It's like, no, you're going through celestial navigation on a sphere and you've reached a point where you've got to use a flat plane. So your answer to that is, well, I'm just presupposing a flat plane for this part of the explanation. Yeah, welcome to Flat Earth. You can't not assume a flat plane to do this part of your claim to be done on a celestial sphere, which is a flat plane. So you're buggered. You can't not do it that way.
yeah, it's like. Yep. Go on, Neil. Sorry.
No, I was just joking around. That's where you start shorting out. You know, they start.
I didn't get that.
Breaking up while I'm talking to you.
I said they start short circuiting at that point.
Yeah. So the problem is,
yeah.
can you have two contrapositives in a line of reasoning where both are required to reach the conclusion? Well, the answer is no.
Exactly.
That'd be logically incoherent worldview.
Yeah, so half of the argument with two contrapositives, nicely put, has to be projected onto the opponent. It's like, no, it's necessary to do this process. You're explaining this process. We are not explaining this process, so there is no attempt or requirement to take apart any section with a flat earth being used, because we're not the ones explaining it. You are. It's just you need a flat earth to do it. So don't project it onto us when you get to the flat earth bit like you're somehow undoing our argument. When you're explaining how you do it on a sphere, you just can't. Flat earth required.
Well, that's the thing, you see, because from the very start of taking measurements with any sextant, what I mean is with a bubble sextant or a marine sextant, you have to create a horizontal. Now, the marine sextant, you use the surface of Earth. That's how it's described. You're using the surface of Earth as your horizontal baseline. When I say the surface, you're using like say 0 degrees mean sea level as a horizontal baseline. That you're pre-assuming the Earth to have a horizontal baseline that all elevations are taken from. So that's what you're doing. That's reality. So for them, they must go through that process, and then after that, start trying to add in globe. And what they're trying to do with us, because they see it happening at the moment with Ruhif and John, is what they're trying to assert that celestial navigation works on a globe. But the only thing they have is mathematics that happen after reality. After reality, where everything is measured flat, then they have mathematical things, elements that they can use as an argument mathematically. But the problem is that we never need a curved plane. They need tangent planes to do any of what they're doing. We never need to assert a curved surface for celestial navigation. They can mathematically assert it after all the flat Earth measurements have been taken. But they can't assert it until all the flat Earth measurements have been taken. So they can go into fantasy after reality, but we don't need to go into their fantasy at any point. They need to assert tangent planes. We don't need to assert anything. We just deal with reality. And that's the big difference between the two sides in this argument.
Well, that's perfectly put. That's the switcheroo or the okey doke, because what they do is they show you a set of drawings from an orthographic viewpoint. And when you study the celestial navigation, you realize the minute you say angle, you need a flat baseline. Okay, so that immediately says you're not doing it from the surface of a sphere. But then the way they do the diagrams is they show a part of a sphere, then they do a tangent plane, and then they'd have the OG, to that geometric horizon that doesn't exist, that you'd never see unless there was no atmosphere argument that they give us. And so you're looking at that picture, and then you hear and see the words dip of the horizon, dip correction. Okay, well, all along, when you investigate it, in order to get an angle, that visible horizon, horizon has to be a small circle matching the equatorial plane, meaning flat. And so imagine, in fact, I'll show a picture of it in a little bit, but imagine you're on top of this portion of a sphere, and then they got those lines going out sideways, and then they got the one to your eye line parallel to the equatorial plane. That matches. That's two baselines right there. One in your eye line is a reference point using the bubble sextant, and then the other one, the equatorial plane, cutting the Earth in half in their pictures, not in reality. And then you see this angled line. And then you say, well, so here's the dip of the horizon. Well, what is it? Well, it's the difference between the sensible horizon and the actual visible horizon. Okay. Well, then what's the dip correction? Well, that's to make it work the same way as if you had a bubble to your eye line, but now you're using the ocean surface. Well, what's the bubble to my eye line tell me? Flat, level. Well, then dip horizon is a correction to make that curved picture flat. Well, then now you got a circle cutting off the top part of a globe where the chord argument comes in, because now you're going through the water. It doesn't make any sense. It's the pictures that fooled them.
Well, the Davis Sextant manual shows the dip correction, their dip correction, not the original dip correction, which was height of void correction, same thing. But now they're two different things. The Davis Sextant manual shows that they're going to first correct from a mathematical globe's horizon, geometric horizon, up to the actual horizon, and then they're going to bring the other end of that line down for the height of void correction. Now, all you actually have to do in reality is height of void correction. That what they're claiming as dip correction, is purely mathematical. You don't need to do it. It's only by choice. If you want to believe the Earth is a globe, you can do that. But in reality, it's totally unnecessary. You just need height of void correction, which is what the original dip correction was, until they added a load of globitis into celestial navigation and started confusing the world with everything, by adding globe into everything. That's why everybody's confused about everything all the time, because they don't know what the difference between reality and globitis. Because globitis is added into everything.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what I'm trying to explain. There is only one correction. And if you read it, it's just height of eye above sea level. And then when you study it and you realize it's an angle measurement that it needs to be corrected for, because you're above the reference plane with an obtuse angle to it, it falls into place. This other correction that you're addressing, they talk about it, but where is it? It's the same height of eye. They're just trying to get it to mean like you're doing two separate ones when you're really not. And that's when they throw in the orthographic pictures with the sideways lines. And it's because they're trying to make you think you live on the sphere. And when you're looking at the sea horizon, it's actually going over something when it never is. I've been at the ocean. It's flat as flat can be. And it's just my height above it. It's nothing more than that.
What they're trying to do is convince you that the horizon is Earth curve. The problem is that when they're using that claim that the horizon is Earth curve and claiming to do a angle correction from Earth curve, then that's their geometric Earth curve in the calculator, which we debunked in 2020. So they're trying to convince you it's Earth curve, therefore it's geometric, and we don't see Earth curve. We've debunked it. So they're screwed.
Well, the thing about it is that what's actually happening is celestial navigation are giving a concession early on with the likes of the David Sextant manual diagrams that the horizon we see is not our curve. It's just like Metabunk did with their little diagram. They're basically saying, well, the horizon we see is not our curve, but they didn't tell people that part. That's in the small print. They didn't tell you. That's not in the big print on the front page. That's in the small print at the back page. At the very end, the part nobody reads.
Yeah, because the book's about how the horizon's Earth curve. It's titled Earth Curve Book, with lots of calculations about how the horizon's Earth curve, and then a little disclaimer right at the end. The horizon isn't actually Earth curve. The horizon's a refracted, non-geometric, non-Earth curve-based position that changes with the weather, and won't give you any angle corrections if you're claiming that you're doing dip to a physical Earth curve, because we can't see it. Even though we've just spent the whole book trying to explain that you do, and that the horizon is Earth curve. It's not.
Let me say something real quick. When they start saying, well, I have to assume a flat Earth, I think we should start saying no. Do it on a sphere right now.
No, you say welcome to flat Earth. Yeah, you will absolutely have to assume a flat Earth to do this. That's a concession. Don't get into the, well, you need to be assuming Earth turns underneath when they concede that there's no drift. Just say, so no drift, Earth not turning. So you've got to measure a flat Earth to do this. That's because Earth's flat. Not, you've got to do this on a sphere. You can't do it on a sphere. That's why you're measuring it flat, Neil. Let's get it right. Don't force them to take up their fundy belief when they take up the flat Earth to do their measurements. Just welcome to the flat plane they're measuring. Because they're measuring it, aren't they?
Yeah, but I still say, don't give me my flat Earth. You do it on a sphere. Because you can't.
Yeah, and when they
No,
can't,
they
you
never do
welcome
that.
them to flat Earth.
Well, you know where they state that the Earth would be seen as a globe if we didn't have gas and temperature, right? Which would be refraction, right? If we didn't have gas and temperature causing refraction, we would see the globe Earth. So when did we not have gas and temperature for someone to see this globe Earth?
Well, Al-Biruni went up a mountain and apparently managed to measure a geometric physical sphere edge horizon with a straight line to it to calculate the radial value with some basic trig. So Al-Biruni apparently had a no-atmo day, but then again he was measuring geometry. Now that we've debunked that, they all tell us how it's just refracted, therefore the horizon's not Earth curve anyway.
Oh dear.
Welcome. Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Arwin, trying to get in during the introduction, of course, Refracted Curvature, Brian's Logic, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello, hello. Good
Yo,
afternoon.
yo, yo. Let's have a day.
Happy
Well, hello.
4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, yeah, although I don't normally like to mention the date. It is a live stream, so if you are watching this in the States, happy 4th of July to you.
How's the weather?
Who cares? Any evidence of a physical geometric spheroid horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Well, that would involve a radius, would it not?
Yes, it would.
And is their radius value a back calculation from flat Earth elevation angles, measurements of perspective to Polaris?
Yes, yes, it is.
And so really the question really is, does perspective exist or does Earth curve exist? Because the problem they have, sorry?
Perspective exists, and Earth curve is the hijacking of perspective at the horizon. So Earth curve does not exist, the horizon is not Earth curve, perspective does exist, perspective's definitely real. To assert Earth curve's real, you need to remove all aspects of perspective from any claim to be observation, actually Muppet vision, with angular size removed, and the target staying the same size at any distance. Ergo, Earth curve is not real. You can't see Earth curve because Earth curve can only be presented in the same way that point C in Al-Biruni's measurement on this diagram on screen now can be seen. That's the side of your own head at point A and the side of the observation at point C. With the observation, if it was a target beyond C, the boat in this instance, being completely devoid of any perspective representation. Here is a globe Earth National Geographic representation in depictorial form. We have about 3,500 miles between, by scale, the man and the boat. But the man's enormous, and the boat's enormous. Why? Well, because it's a 100-foot boat and a 6-foot man, and it makes no difference how far the boat is. It's removed all aspects of the reality we know, that's perspective. Earth curve is not a Muppet view. This is how it's represented on screen right now. The side of your own head meeting a tangent point to the side of a circle is Earth curve. The horizon isn't that.
Okay, but there is a massive paradox here, and that is, if Polaris drops and rises in the sky due to Earth curve, then there can be no globe radius value. But yet, the whole rate that mathematically Polaris drops and rises in the sky on a globe Earth is based on the radius value that they assert. But that radius value, hang on, 1 second, John. That radius value is a back calculation of flat Earth elevation angles, which is measurement of perspective to Polaris. So the paradox is, if they want to claim the Earth as a globe, then they don't have a radius, because that requires flat Earth elevation angles to be back calculated from to come up with the radius. But then they have to, like their globe then also has to match the rise and drop rate of Polaris. But that would require the radius to be what it is due to the back calculation. Do you understand? So it's like if they claim a globe, then they don't have a radius. If they claim a radius, then they're claiming angle. Then it's like it's an admittance that perspective and angular measurements of perspective exist. Because you can't have Earth curve and perspective. You can't have the two.
Right. Well, they've got the buffer in between, which is the celestial sphere, and because the word sphere's in there, there's a little bit of bait and switch availability available to them when it comes to making people not realise that those angles you're describing measured off a plane, that's a flat Earth, to the perspective view of your stars to map them in the ephemeris. Well, that idea can then be transposed into a globe sphere rather than semi-sphere over your head based on the view that you get of the stars. Well, that semi-sphere, called the celestial sphere, can just become the standing point for you on the outside edge of the protractor you just used to measure those angles. Well, that makes you standing on the top of the protractor. And then you call that the ground, call that the globe Earth, and say that you've got a globe sphere. Well, because both have got the word sphere in, people don't notice this debate and switch between a flat plane and angles to the sky, that's the celestial sphere, and the sky rotating around your position with you fixed to a protractor, turning the protractor, looking at the sky moving to the horizon because it's a sphere, Earth turning sphere. So you've got these two words, sphere, meaning very different things. One's a flat Earth with a sphere over the top of it. The other is you standing on the protractor, based on the angles you took when you were stood on a flat Earth.
Yeah, but there is no... Go on, John, I'll go after.
I was just going to say, I think I can trim that down to, if the Earth was curving, you couldn't get the angle measurements that you're using to assert that it's curving.
Very concise, much better put.
Yeah, but it's worse than that, because the globe Earth, if Polaris drops and rises, if they claim it drops and rises due to Earth curvature and you moving north or south, looking at Polaris, then that means perspective doesn't exist. But if perspective does exist, and we can measure it with angles, and it does exist, and we do, that means Earth curve and the globe Earth can't exist. Angles cannot coexist, and globe exist. Only one can exist. And I just want to add in one little thing. I don't see a curved sky. The curved sky was only it's only a representation, an orthographic representation, through the use of the protractor. We don't see a curved sky. No one can show me a curved sky. I see a sky that has a perspective view to it. I don't see a curve. I don't see an arc of the sky. Just want to add that in.
Right, the celestial sphere is the description of your perspective view. And if you want to describe how you are having the world represented to you from your position, then you can say your view arcs around your position. Obviously, you can't see through the ground, so that gives you a 0 line. And then every tilt of your head will be a degree up towards your zenith. That's when you're looking straight up. And then back down again to the limitation of your view. Well, that arc, like a protractor, would represent your view of the stars in the sky. Well, that arc would be called the celestial sphere if you're doing it from that particular location. That's just the arc of the view that you get, as opposed to a curved sky. I don't know. The sky might be curved. It seems unlikely based on how it represents itself. But there we go. You're right. I don't see a curved sky either. Of course, on the globe, the Earth has got sphere-shaped air, let alone sphere-shaped sky. It's got sphere-shaped air. Anyway, sorry, John.
Well, I was going to say, that part really doesn't matter because you need the flat plane either way.
Yep, to get the angles. Speaking of sphere-shaped air, though, is there any evidence that you can have gas pressure, like we all breathe, without the necessary antecedent of a container for the gas to press on?
No, you can't have sphere-shaped air unless the container is sphere-shaped.
Right, but the globe Earth's got a sky vacuum, an availability of volume for the gas we're all breathing to fill, and no containment.
Well, that debunks the globe's existence, doesn't it?
Right, sphere-shaped air, used in the Muppet Vision maths to bend the light through the sphere-shaped air that we don't have and can't have, and we'd all be dead if we did, because it would have dispersed into the sky vacuum.
I was thinking about this yesterday. Doesn't it go one step further and debunk the heliocentric universe?
Yes, it does. That's correct. Yeah, you can't have a vacuum without containment either. Correct.
Well, they always bring up existing gas pressure, but they can never demonstrate it without using existing pressure.
Yeah, but that's like saying, show me a bucket of water without the bucket, and they keep turning up with a bucket of water and going, look, right in the middle of the water, right? See the water that's in the middle of the bucket? That's got no bucket. And you're like, yeah, but it's surrounded by a bucket. Yeah, but inside the bucket, there's no bucket around any of the water, is there? There's water that's only touching other water, therefore no bucket required for that water.
When you say it like that, it makes them look even more stupid.
You just freeze it. You just freeze it and then take it out of the bucket.
Right. Analogous by a really vague way when I use liquid instead of gas. But when then you take it to solids, you know, it's not like it's loose bonds and they're flowing over each other, so you can have the context be it dribbling out of the bucket. Solids are solid, bonded. Liquids are loose bonds, but still bonded. Whereas gas, completely unbonded. It's not attached to anything. It's not like you can suddenly freeze the gas and go, there you go. there's your high-moving, high-velocity elastic collision gas, all frozen. It's like, well, how did that happen? It's either going to condense into a different state of matter, or it's a gas. It's going to freely move in all directions, unbonded, to fill whatever volume it's got to fill. That's what gas does.
Yeah, but the water around the center of the water in the center of the bucket is containing the water at the center of the bucket. That's globe logic.
I see. Yeah, but it would all dribble out without the container, and in the case of gas, it would disperse into whatever volume it's got. So, yeah, we'd all be dead if there was a sky vacuum above our heads. The sky vacuum's nonsense. Space is fake. All claims of travel through that area, that region they call space, outer space, are fake. Because we'd all be dead if it were true. So none of it's real. Space travel, travel into Mars, travel into the moon, finding out what the sun is with probes. It's all lies. Every bit of it.
What about gravity? Don't they have scientific evidence for that?
Good question. Is there any scientific evidence of gravity? Asks John.
No, only the claim that gravity is gone.
Well, they'd have to define it correctly first, wouldn't they? And actually state a claim.
And experience it physically in some form.
Yeah, well, they'd have to at least say what it is that they're expecting to experience.
See, I'd see it as being the other way around. I'd expect them to show me the thing that I'm going to be experiencing before describing what I've experienced, as opposed to describing what I should be or could be or would be experiencing for me to then not experience anything.
No, you're correct, actually. The way you say it is actually a lot better.
But just show us it. Show us the phenomena of gravity. Now, we ask because we already know it's a conceptual medium bending. That ain't going to happen. You're not going to show us conceptual force space-time bending. That don't happen. Time is a concept. You can't bend it. It doesn't dilate. It doesn't warp anything. You've all been duped. All the people who believe in gravity. 107 years ago, it might have been a physical force, but they quickly cottoned on to the idea that having things that are supposed to have physical phenomena attached to them, that's probably not a good idea. Best to move those claimed to be physical phenomena into the realm of the conceptual, mathematical. And then you can't have anyone show you that it doesn't happen. What do you mean it doesn't happen? Of course pseudo-Riemannian force space-time bends. Here you go, here's the maths. There's it bending. So it bends.
Yeah, and what you have is a tide of boneheads who want to talk to us and tell us about how a force of gravity works on the small scale. So the effect is to just drop your phone. That's gravity. That's what we get, isn't it? It's like, no, that's just my phone dropping. You know, you haven't proven the cause of that effect. You've just asserted a cause.
Was it one of those rubber blow-up phones? Because if I did the same thing and filled that rubber phone with helium and let it go, would it go down, go boom boom? What about the gas itself? Regardless of any solid container I might put around that gas to demonstrate this effect, the phone's going to go up, so's the gas. So while he might be dropping a solid through the medium of air that we have because we must be contained, that's a different side issue. But that gas is also part of our existence, and that's not going down. It's got what they never managed to define as having mass. Well, it should be going down, go boom boom if gravity's real. Gas has stuff. Therefore, it should be attracted to the mass of Earth. It should be bending in the space-time well, going down at 9.8 meters per second by our perspective, because according to them, Earth's moving up at 9.8 meters per second because of the result of a bending of space-time. Therefore, gas should be going down, go boom, boom. It doesn't, though. Gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom because of a conceptual medium called space-time bending. It expands in all directions at high velocity, and considering that most of it's created at ground level, if not all of it, well, it's not going from the ground, go down, go boom, boom. It's going from the ground up. Debunking gravity.
Well, didn't Phil Bell calculate how quick a pumice stone would fall to the Marianas Trench?
Yes, for Anthony. Much to Anthony's delight.
I like Anthony, but I think that was kind of a low blow. I mean, anyone could get that wrong. And just focus on the word stone and not realise that the pumice stone won't sink. So, if he did it to someone else, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. But Phil is kind of like, Phil didn't really deserve that. No offense, Anthony.
In the interest of balance, Sleeping Warrior's a prick.
But he's a professor that didn't know pumice stone floated.
Yeah,
So
I
we're
think
all
that.
clear.
But that's common sense. So what? If you put... I hate you when you put me in a position where I have to defend someone like Phil Bell. Okay. I'll do it with my own family rather than knocking Phil Bell or bringing Sleeping Warrior into this. I mentioned the other day, bigging up my own dad, that he used to be a programmer back before he retired. Sounds swish, right? Dealing with logic, complex stuff. Yeah, the guy couldn't figure out how to make his alarm clock work. I'm not even joking. Basic 3-4 button alarm clock. He couldn't set it, couldn't get the alarm to work. He'd never do it the entire time I grew up. Could program complex logic into a system and make it work for a vast database. Couldn't get his alarm clock to work. So what? If you put Professor Phil Bell on Jeopardy, I'm sure he'd do very poorly for general knowledge. So what? Does that really speak to anything? This is pure ad hom, really. Sleeping Warrior.
No.
Gotcha.
Did your dad claim to be an expert on alarm clocks?
No.
Phil Bell claims to be an expert on gravity.
Still just a cheap gotcha to me.
It is a cheap gotcha, but it's on someone who claims to be a subject matter expert who didn't know.
I'll concede it's on topic. He's asking the question around the context of gravity. I'm just trying to find a way of being as Weasley as Sleeping Warrior is when he allows something detrimental to me to go along with his point unchecked, just because who cares if it's detrimental to me? You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to do the same thing. But you are right. It was perfectly contextualised. I can't really have this dig against Sleeping Warrior because he's contextualised it perfectly. It's in his subject matter expertise field. Therefore, if he gets it wrong, it doesn't matter that it's pumice stone, and that's seemingly a gotcha. When it's his expert field, he should bloody know. If he's going to say, I know, don't get it wrong then.
And Sleeping Warrior is, I think, objectively a dick about the way he treated you muting people, being the same as the way Jim Panda mutes people.
Yeah, he did. But it wasn't conducive to his point, so it didn't matter. So he just moved on with that intact, regardless of my objections. That's typical lawyer behavior.
I thought Sleeping Warrior's argument was rock solid myself.
I think you'll find it sunk like a cork.
No, I have to disagree with you. Phil Bell never claimed to be an expert on the density of mediums in accordance with the density of objects, substances, or gases, or liquids. He claimed to be a gravity expert. Now, density has nothing to do with gravity, does it? Does really density have anything to do with gravity? It's mass is connected to gravity. So he's an expert on mass and gravity, two things that don't exist. So you can't expect him to know that a pumice stone wouldn't go to the bottom. If I was asked the same thing, I didn't know what a pumice stone was. If I was asked the same thing, I wouldn't have known.
Hold on, but he claims that
hang on.
He claims that gravity is the reason things go down.
Yeah, that's fine. But my point is that I focused way more on the density of mediums and the density of objects and substances, blah, 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 than Phil ever did, obviously.
Oh, I see what you're doing. So you're saying, oh, how could Professor know about this? This is not his expert field. This is a question in regards to relative density disequilibrium, in the regards to the disequilibrium or lack thereof of a pumice stone. And this is our expert field. We know about relative density disequilibrium, various different mediums and all the rest of it. You guys completely ignore air. And when we do talk about air, you talk about it going down. Yeah, because you've got mass and an expertise in gravity. So what Brian's saying is, how can you possibly hold him to task on not understanding how the world really works in this explanation relative density disequilibrium? He's an expert in pseudoscience. Can't be expected to know how that works. Only reasonable, right, Brian? We know about that sort of stuff, physical reality. He knows about the pseudoscience of mass.
Yes,
Horse crap.
Yeah.
Horse crap. You can't claim to be a professor of science claiming gravity and not know that a pumice
He's not
stone
claiming
floats.
to be a professor of science. He's claiming to be a doctor of philosophy.
Yeah, he doesn't work within reality, John. And as I said, even though I do work within reality, if Anthony asked me about a pumice stone, I wouldn't have known until Anthony told me that a pumice stone wouldn't sink. I wouldn't have known what a pumice stone was. I don't know. I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it is. I just know that it doesn't sink. That's all I know.
Well, it does. In terms of the philosophy of gravity, which is what Phil's an expert in, I'm agreeing with you, Brian. You shouldn't be expected to know about this stuff. He's got an expert field in a philosophical idea of pseudo-Riemannian bending for space-time. That would be gravity in the current description. That's not reality, so you can't be expected to be challenged on how pumice stones are going to react in a seeming to parallel with gravity, but isn't because it's not described in pseudo-force space. So it's not reasonable.
Excuse me. So you're saying that Phil Bell doesn't believe any of this stuff is reality, so he shouldn't be able to be challenged on reality?
I wasn't there privy to the argument. If he explicitly stated that he's claiming this is reality, then absolutely, I'd take it all back in a heartbeat. But with him not here, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that this is his doctorate in philosophy, PhD, whatever you call it. Well, that's what it is, isn't it? It's an idea. It's a philosophy. That's what gravity is. You know, you can think of it as a force. That's not explicitly stating that this is how it takes place in reality.
If 95% of the Western world believes it's real,
Stereotyping
and
fallacy.
he's asserting,
Yeah.
hold on,
It's not
no.
here. Stereotyping fallacy. I'm not going to pin that on Phil if he's not here. Stereotyping fallacy.
Is there a professorship?
Oh, get into
Is there a
objections, John. This is
professorship?
just what I was looking
Let's actually
for. Hold
advance
on.
the argument.
Go ahead.
So,
Actually,
for example,
just 1 sec. Just let John round out his point because he was trying to get to the end there. Go ahead,
Is
John.
there a professorship for people who philosophize about the gas lamps in Narnia?
Possibly. Quite possibly.
not equivalent. Okay, what is equivalent is if you're going to do a gravity that has to do with falling to the Marianas Trench, then the implication is that there's water there. And in order to do such thing, you need to know the weight of the object, right? So the answer would be, did Anthony give Phil the mass of the object or the weight of the object? Because that's important. Because when you say weight, right, weight in Phil's paradigm is only relative to the gravity that the object is within at the moment, right? And in order to know that, you need to know what medium it's in, right? Because you need to have the specific gravity of the object, which is essentially the buoyancy of the object within the medium that it's in. So to forego that and just go straight to the mass equation would be a foible on Phil Bell's part. Not knowing what a pumice stone is irrelevant.
Plus, you couldn't qualify it in such
Yeah.
simplistic terms for Phil in those terms because pumice stone is a solid with the gas dispersed through it. So it's not reasonable to give him a 500 kilogram pumice stone. Okay? No, because it's still going to behave in the same manner because of the air that's dispersed through it, right? So giving him those values is oversimplified.
Can I put a question to the panel in contrast? What Phil might say, there's something else that relates to this, and that would be a bucket filled with water and spinning around your head. Every child knows why the water's staying in. How come Phil doesn't?
I just want to go on. I just want to get before we move off onto the bucket thing. I have to kind of go against what was said a minute ago there. Once you bring specific gravity into it, you're bringing density into it. So consequently, then you're not talking about gravity anymore. If you're talking about weight within Phil's paradigm, weight is mass times gravity. So mass is given weight via a force of gravity. So even if Anthony gave him the weight of the object, he's still going to, within his paradigm, he's still going to calculate it via the mass. Or whatever, he's still going to want to know the mass to calculate it because he's only thinking mass given weight by gravity because gravity force causes things to go down because they're attracted towards the solid earth. Sorry.
So he's asserting, wait, hold on a minute. He's asserting things fall to earth?
Yes.
I thought y'all said he believed in Narnia or something like that.
He's asserting that things are attracted to the earth.
Correct.
Because the earth is the biggest mass. That's what he's asserting.
So he's asserting this in reality then, because we live on Earth, right?
Yes.
We
Okay,
stand on
John.
Earth.
Yeah, okay. We've got to that point. I didn't realise that was what I was opening the door for. Okay, I take it all back. It's absolutely down to him. It's his responsibility. Yeah, fine. I can take it all back.
I think it was a low blow.
Not on a subject matter expert. That's called daring your witness.
Well, at least he got to make his bucket list.
Yeah, I agree. Anthony led him beautifully on his expert thing.
Yes, but look, the gotcha is not knowing what a pumice stone is. The gotcha is not going through all those processes that I explained that you would need to know in order to do this calculation correctly. It would lead you ultimately, if you did it correctly, to the question, what is the density of the object in question? You'd need to know that in order to do this accurately.
Yes.
At which point we're no longer calculating specific gravity, though, are we?
Yeah, you have a specific density and volume in a specific media, right? And then you could calculate that, how it's going to respond in that media at that moment.
And what you've just described, do you want to just repeat that list again? Because it didn't involve gravity. What you just described was calculating. You just talked about calculating the relative density versus the medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's relative density.
To the question, what is the density of the object? You need to do this. Birdman's playing it back for you.
Birdman, can you pop yourself on mute? You're causing a bit of feedback. Birdman, can you hear us? You've joined a live show and are now causing audio chaos.
Yes, I hear you.
Can you just pop yourself on mute if you didn't want to say something? Unless you had something to say, of course.
Oh, I didn't know I was off mute. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just pop yourself on your own local mute. Yeah, you've just described all the things you'll need to go on to call it gravity, but what you've actually calculated is the relative density in a specific medium. But that's what we call it.
Yeah, he would have to get all that first, and then he'd have to take all of that and then put it into some kind of equation to get his idea of gravity, whatever that is. The point is, in getting all that information, it should come out that you need to know the object in question's relative density, right? Which means you need to know the specific volume of the object, right? And the density over that volume. So whether he knew what a pumice stone was in the first instance wouldn't matter. He would need to arrive at that information in order to do it accurately. So he still screwed up.
Well, he
Agreed.
believes all that information is contained within the word kilogram.
And that's retarded.
It is for them.
Well,
though.
he's also
But hold on, John's got a point, because that's where I explained that there's not enough information in the description. But if for them it's just kilos or newtons or whatever they're going to ascribe as a value, then that's what they've got to work with. Either the old and dusty busted Newtonian mechanisms, or Earth rising up towards it at a calculable rate. That's what they've got to work with.
Let me, again, another contrast, because it needs to be done. He's always in chat arguing about celestial navigation and angle measurements. Does Phil Bell actually know what an angle is? You would think if he's smart and can just open up a dictionary or something, he can find out. And yet he says you can take an angle from a curved baseline. So isn't this kind of the same thing, that they put themselves in a corner arguing for something like globe, earth, sphere, gravity that doesn't exist? And since it doesn't exist, it can't be validated. Just simple definitions of words destroy. So he says things that catch him out eventually. Can't be going around saying you can get an angle from a curved baseline. It just doesn't work ever.
Moving on. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, party hard hard. What axial rotation? You need an R, a radial value. You ain't got that either.
I wonder what will happen going forward with this axial rotation claim, because it's getting more and more concise, and it's, given we've just talked about the 107-year-old physical ascribable effect of gravity versus the now non-claimable, non-physical pseudo-Ramonian force space-time bending conceptual medium-based gravity. Well, given that that's happened not that far in our past, wouldn't you say it's about time that they removed the physical claimable attributes of Coriolis deflection from the globe Earth claim? Because that's something we can definitely show doesn't happen. There's a claim to be physical effect called Coriolis that we're supposed to see because we turn beneath things on a turning Earth. And we can show it doesn't happen. Just that simple.
How can you ask? Wow. How can you ask them to remove something that they put in there on something that doesn't exist to make it seem like it exists?
They managed it with gravity 107 years ago.
So they can't remove it then, because they need it still going, because it doesn't exist to prove the other thing that doesn't exist.
I don't know. They've kept dusty old Newtonian gravity around for 107 years, still teach it to the state of children.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you. They need to keep it because it's the only thing holding the lie up. Even if it changes in university, it goes to Einstein, they'll keep both because they have to keep it.
Sure, but there was actually a point where Einstein superseded the current understanding of gravity. In other words, regardless of it still being taught by the powers that should not be to our children, not my kids, but to some of your kids, well, that rhetoric, if you go through the motions or went into higher education and learnt about it, doesn't stack up in physical reality in a modern, I hate to use the word, scientific description. It's not science, but that's what they'll call it. Well, that current science, in quotes, for gravity is conceptual only based. It's got no physical phenomena. In other words, they managed to remove it in the real rhetoric, even though the old rhetoric from 107 years around is still hanging around like a fart in a jacuzzi.
Well, please hang on, let me finish. Please don't miss the point I'm trying to make here. They can't give up any of it. They have to redefine it after they come up with new versions. So they come with Newtonian, then they redefine it 107 years ago to Einsteinian. And then when you ask them, why'd you do that? They say, well, on Earth it's Newtonian, but out there it's Einsteinian, so they both work. So they make up another one to cover up for the first two that don't exist, which were made up for globe and gravity that doesn't exist. So just keep compounding.
So out in space, yeah, you've got Globiolis, because you're in the inertial reference frame. So Globiolis applies. Everything's moving as one with the turning Earth. Therefore, out in space, inertial reference frame, stars keep moving, you're moving with Earth. No, that would be non-inertial, though. I don't know how they can square this circle. You say they can keep it around.
Are you talking about the
all they've
movement
managed
about
is
it?
to-
You're talking about gravity?
No, we're comparing gravity to Coriolis / Globiolis. So you've got two forms of gravity. One has got a physical phenomena, mass attracting mass, 107 years out of date, superseded by conceptual force space-time bending. So they've got two different gravities. Now, when you get to the brass tacks of which one is real, according to them, back to the discussion 20 minutes ago, Einstein's gravity, that's what they're claiming is the current story of Earth moving up 9.8 meters per second squared. That's the explanation for it. Einstein's version of pseudo-force space, time bending, time dilating. That's what they've got, right? So the old one isn't applicable. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's still taught to schools. I've still got to keep it around. But currently, there is only one claim of an effect that we can observe. It's very much a current claim. Coriolis effect is the effect the globe Earth has. Now, beyond the globe Earth rhetoric, you've got the fringes, not the old and busted that's still being taught in school. This is very different. This is the new school of anti-flat earthers coming back with the, I don't know whose source we can use, let's say it's National Geographic or BBC Weather or whoever, that's saying the Coriolis effect, which is not actual, is affecting, it can't, winds, for example. You're like, well, that's just wrong. And it won't take long for people to figure out that that's just wrong if it's pointed out to them. You can't have illusions affecting wind. You know, I've had a PhD and 2 pilots over a barrel on it just since we've been talking about it in the last few weeks. So, humility, you know, that's what's going to have to come about, because when you are factually accurate in terms of what Coriolis is, an illusion you observe as you turn beneath, then you've got a big problem for a globe Earth. You can only have that illusion as you turn beneath, and that shortens flight times. Or you can reclaim that an illusion affects winds to confuse people. But then you'll have me coming along as a flat earther going, you're an idiot, you don't know what Coriolis effect is. Illusions don't affect wind. Illusions don't affect aeroplanes.
Can I ask you a few questions, Nathan?
Go on.
On a stationary Earth, if I hover in a helicopter, can I still observe the celestial bodies moving, even
Yes.
in time-lapse photography?
Yes, we've got an example
Yes.
of that. Somebody's launched off the ground and watched the stars in a relatively stationary position still move from the drone at the rate that we see at 15 degrees an hour of movement in the stars. So yeah, on the ground, which is stationary, and in the air, which you don't deviate if you hover in a drone or a helicopter in your example, you can still see the stars moving.
Yeah. So, right. So let me start that again, because I wanted to just get a yes or no off you. So,
Okay.
if we assume a stationary Earth, then if you hovered off the Earth in a helicopter, then you would still observe the celestial bodies moving.
Yes.
Yes? Right. Now, in reality, is that what happens?
Yes.
Right. So, we shouldn't be talking about the Coriolis. I know this is it may be a bit cheeky to say, but why are we even talking about the Coriolis effect when the truth is it's up to our opposition, to prove the Earth is not stationary? It's up to them to prove that. Because everything that would happen on a stationary Earth happens, doesn't it?
I'm with Brian on this. I mean, we give them, when they argue Coriolis, we give them that it's a globe Earth, and we give them that it's a non-inertial turning reference frame to try to prove their point, which they fail to do. So why are we even bothered giving them that much?
Yeah, because when we do, all they end up doing is defending why it doesn't give the effect with our assumption intact that we've given them. So absolutely, lads, you're both absolutely on the money. Why give them the concession that we're on a non-inertial turning reference frame? Because all you end up doing is arguing with them about how they're not claiming that anymore. They're just assuming it so that they can have any outcome, have Earth still turning. It's like, no, don't give them the inertial reference frame. What do you mean we're on a non-inertial reference frame? You mean I turn beneath stuff to see drift? No, we don't. No, we won't see drift because, welcome to non-rotating Earth then, because the globe's claiming Coriolis drift. That's me turning beneath stuff, seeing it drift. And then they'll launch back into trying to attempt to explain why there isn't drift, and I go, all you're doing is arguing against the globe claim that there is. So we'll just have them arguing against the globe claim that there is, rather than us telling them how they should be claiming they're turning beneath stuff. No, we're not going to start telling them that they should be claiming it like Neil tried to do earlier with Earth Curve. Like, no, sod that. What's that? No drift. You're going to explain why things don't drift, with an assumed turning Earth with no effect to observe. Well, that's not the globe claim of Coriolis. Globe claims we're turning beneath stuff to see it drift. That's Coriolis. Tell me all day about how it ain't doing that. You just define the globe. It claims Coriolis drift, an effect we should see and don't.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that when we're arguing about Coriolis with them, that still allows them life within the argument. The reason I asked you the questions I asked you earlier was because the effects we see are the exact effects that you would see on a stationary Earth. So it's up to them to prove the Earth is not stationary. Because those effects are the exact effects you would see on a stationary Earth.
I see what you're saying. You're saying the extraordinary claim is that we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour at a rim velocity on the equator of a sphere Earth that I assume, because you've demanded that I do. Well, let's say I don't assume that I've got a rim velocity of 1,000 miles an hour on a spinning sphere because it's non-inertial turning reference frame. If I don't assume that, where do you, the globe earther, begin to prove that we are? Well, officially, you claim that that turning reference frame you'll assume creates an effect of drift because you're turning beneath things. It's called Coriolis effect. So if that's your claim, you want to claim that we are spinning, prove that. Start there. Show me an effect that proves it. Don't justify why we don't have any effect to see with an assumption that we're spinning, with no effect to see. Show me the effect, show me the proof, show me something that proves we're spinning. Easy. They just defend why we haven't got the effect all day long, because we have to suddenly assume with them that we're spinning and non-inertial. John's absolutely right. Let's not give it them. They work off our intelligence because they know we know what Coriolis really is. So we start from the point that everyone's got an understanding of Coriolis, so we'll work within that framework. I'm just going to play dumb. Coriolis effect, what's that? Show me what it is. How does it work? How does Globe Earth do that?
I've been saying this for years. Why we emerge?
Absolutely, Neil.
Can't
You
hear
have
you,
been
Neil.
saying it forever. I think Brian said it a couple of weeks before, though. I've got to be honest.
Well, look, the thing about it is, I know what they're going to come up with, right? When we ask them, prove the Earth is not stationary, what they're going to come up with is they're going to claim the Coriolis effect. But they're going to probably call it the Coriolis force. And then what they're going to try and claim is that flights moving north to south or south to north, due south, due north, whichever, will have a deviation. That's what they're going to come up with. Okay, prove this deviation.
Yeah, show me a guy
it.
on the ground watching that flight deviate, because that means that you're turning beneath the flight.
Right,
But
the
see, the
reference
thing about
frames.
it is a couple of years ago, sorry, did I cut you off, Nathan?
No, it's someone else in Discord. Go ahead, whoever it was. Hammer, I think.
I'm saying the onus is on them to prove the reference frames.
Exactly. Well put, Mr. Palmer.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of years ago, George Netchuk, back in 2017 or 18, I was on Ranty's show. It was short a while after Ranty started his show. George Netchuk was on there with me and Ranty. And I used the London to Lagos flight, right? Because he was claiming Coriolis, right? Now, I knew at the time that what real Coriolis, I think I had known at that point what real Coriolis was. But he was claiming that Coriolis is only a north-south thing, or south-north thing. And he was claiming that it's observable in flights, or let's say pilots have to take into account these things. No, this kind of rubbish, baseless claims they were always coming out with. So I said, okay. And I said, let's do London to Lagos, right? And he went off and got 16 or more different flight times and the speed, the average flight time and the average speed was all worked out for that flight from London to Lagos, right? That's a north-south flight. And at the very end of it, he didn't realize until at the very end of all his calculations that there was no room for a deviation. The time that it took the plane to get from London to Lagos moving at this average speed meant that it matched the exact time that the plane does traverse that distance. So for it to have to do a deviation, not only would it have to, once it takes off, not only would it have to fly out from London over Schiphol, which is in the Netherlands, and head for the Middle East or somewhere like that to meet up with Lagos under those conditions. Not only did it not do that, its timing was exactly as it should be for that exact distance if it flew in that exact direction. I remember Ranty, when he used to admit to being a flat earther, was laughing his ass off. And the audience were laughing their ass off because George was up for proving how his claim was total rubbish.
Got a newbie in. Is that a newbie? DJ something or other? DJ 39453. Well, good to have you. Glad that you're paying attention. Any evidence?
I have something semi-related to this, but it involves the ether. Do you want to move on, or can we discuss that?
I don't mind discussing the ether.
But what?
There's less than 100 people watching. There's like just under 100 people watching, which is pretty crap towards the end of the show, I've got to be honest. Please share the show if you haven't done already.
Well, the ether, right? Because Bob Nodell back in the day, he done a gyroscope test, and it showed 15 degrees rotation of the gyroscope. And he came back after that and said that it was ether drift causing that. So we've already established Earth is not a non-inertial turning reference frame. To assert ether drift, you would need a non-inertial turning reference frame of the ether, would you not?
No, it would still be a non-inertial turning reference frame to call it drift in the same context of Coriolis effect.
Right. If you're on the inertial frame, right, and there's a non-inertial turning reference frame around you, isn't that what, in effect, Bob Nodell was claiming?
No, because the drift would be the cage moving around the fixed frame of the fibre optic gyro. Unless I misunderstand how fibre optic gyro works, it's just the same as any other gyro. What you're seeing is the cage move around it, which means that the cage has to be attached to a non-inertial spinning reference frame in order to call what you see drift. Contextually, that's Coriolis drift. That's what it is. Now, ether rotation would be something taking place that's devoid of the reference frame attached to the spinning gyro that isn't deviating. Now, without being too pedantic, you said the gyro drifts. No, it does not. Gyros do not drift.
The hashtag thanks Bob, he didn't demonstrate drift.
No.
Was that ever resolved?
Okay,
You know,
okay.
whether it was
I
a
have to
fault
explain
of
this
the
to John.
equipment?
Well, no, because I took it as read to make my example in terms of what that means for the globe. So the assertion...
Right, I'm not...
Go on.
No. We've already established that we're not standing on a non-inertial turning reference frame.
Right.
So we don't have to do that, but we're talking about Bob's claim now in reference to the gyro that drifted at 15 degrees an hour.
Okay, fine. I'll break that down then. That's just an affirming the consequent formological fallacy with the substitution of Earth turn being presupposed with ether drift being presupposed. The fact that the gadget doesn't necessarily line up in terms of the language used to describe the drift observed is irrelevant, because it's just an affirming the consequent that Bob's repositioned with his own claim. P statement's no longer Earth turning, it's now ether turning. If P, ether turning, then Q, drift in gyro. drifting gyro, Q, therefore ether turn. It's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Just the
Right, but
exact same fallacy that was being used by the globe Earth. The only problem with the globe Earth claim is that if you take it as read, that Earth is turning beneath the gyro, well, that's the claim the globe's making. That's Coriolis effect. You turning beneath to see things drift. The 15 degrees of the drift of the cage around the fixed reference of the gyro, which isn't attached to the claim to be turning Earth. Ergo, you're turning beneath the gyro in its fixed reference frame, inertial. Well, that means you're turning beneath aeroplanes if you take it as read. That claim's true, that we're seeing Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour in the gyro's cage. Then you're turning beneath stuff that's inertial in its frame of reference. Therefore, you're turning beneath aeroplanes.
right, that's you went back to the globe claim again. What I'm saying though is if there's a moving reference frame moving at 15 degrees an hour around you, would that not cause an actual deviation?
No. You'd have to be attached to it. So if the gyro was physically attached to the non-inertial frame of reference, which in the description that Bob Nodal gives is the deflection that he's describing in the word drift. Well, that's the star movement, isn't it? Let's forget calling it ether drift. Doesn't matter what label he gives it. Well, that's not part of the reference frame attached to the gyro's cage, is it? So you can't repurpose the assertion other than if my claim, then parlor trick, therefore my claim.
Well, no, he's claiming that the gyro, not the cage, is moving with the stars, right?
No, the gyro doesn't move. I thought sorry, John. Do gyroscopes, the motion of a gyro, does it drift? Is that what it's useful for? The fact that gyros drift, is that what they're known for? Drifting.
I'm only working within his claim.
But the gyro does not drift ever. Gyros. I'm sure you can have examples before some wanker in the comments corrects me on some mechanical imperfection. That's all I'm talking about. The principle of your perfect gyro without fault is that it spins in free space, not affected by your movement. If you've got a bicycle wheel spinning on the end of your finger, you can move your hand and arm through any motion and axis, and the bicycle wheel will stay in the same plane, spinning, won't it? So by principle, that's gyroscopic motion, not drifting. The drift you observe, claimed by Globe Earth in a gyro, is because the cage, I don't know how to describe that in a fibre optic gyro, I don't care, is attached to the non-inertial turning reference frame. That's how their claim makes sense. When you just reposition it to the non-inertial reference frame isn't non-inertial, it's now stationary. Well then, what's causing an effect on the gyroscopic motion when the effect is the cage claimed to be moving at 15 degrees an hour, noticeable in the fact that it's moved around the fixed frame of the gyro? That doesn't translate into the stars having a frame of reference moving or otherwise. It's got no bearing on the machine.
Right, you just said it. The fixed frame, right? What if, well, in essence, his claim is that it's not a fixed frame of the gyro that's rotating at 15 degrees an hour, as demonstrated by the gyro.
Right, it makes no sense. Therefore, it just becomes if P then Q, and if P is ether drift and Q is parlor trick. That's all it becomes, because it doesn't make logical sense in terms of how the physical motion of the drift would be claimed to be influencing the not drifting fibre optic gyro part of the machine. That doesn't make sense when you translate it to the sky. It just doesn't work anymore. It's merely if P, ether drift, then Q, drift in gyroscope. Gyroscope drift, therefore my ether turn. That's all it is.
Can I insert something now, please?
Unless John's finished.
For the last 10 minutes.
Hold on. Are you done, John?
Yeah,
Was there anything else? Yes, you can, Owen, if he's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I am. I'll reformulate it and then present it to you a little bit better.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes,
right,
Owen,
so
go ahead.
There was an issue a while back where you basically stated, yeah, gyroscopes aren't supposed to drift, so wasn't Bob's gyroscope basically a faulty gyroscope? And we've never. Why aren't we pushing that? Like, it's basically the ring laser gyroscopes are not supposed to drift. I just Googled it. Do ring laser gyroscopes drift? And it specifically says it eliminates a significant source of drift. So it seems like ring laser gyroscopes are supposed to
you're
drift
getting confused.
less.
No,
I'm
Owen's
not done
confused.
yet.
Let me just break down what they mean. You're right into the reference. The reference is right, but you're wrong in your understanding of what they mean by eliminates mechanical drift, i.e. the bearing causing the gyro itself to not maintain the principles of gyroscopic motion. That's what they're referring to in a engineering regard. So when gyros actually drift, that's a defect. They shouldn't. It should maintain perfect gyroscopic motion in a fixed.
We know this.
Hold on.
About
Flat Earth Solar.
mechanical
Did you want to add
gyroscopes,
something?
right?
Hold on. Flat Earth Solar. Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Bob's claim was that he also took it in an aeroplane and that he registered that drift at different altitudes. And then you're completely detached from the inertial, the spinning reference frame. So then, like you were saying, what are you registering if there isn't that second reference frame to pick up the drift in the first place?
I wasn't done
all
yet.
that does is debunk the claim of non-inertial turning reference frame that's Earth, but can't be retranslated into a different affirming the consequent claim, unfortunately for Bob. He did. That's his problem.
Right.
I'll go after Arwen.
I would
No
like to
offense to
continue now.
everybody here, but how can we be so ass backwards when we've been talking about this stuff for years?
Who's
I'm trying to resolve it right now.
Okay.
Why
go on,
don't
then.
we actually figure out, like, do ring laser gyroscopes drift or not? Or was it simply a mechanical flaw, as we suspect? But is it actually absolutely so? Right? Because
we're
if it isn't,
hold on.
then it's done.
Stop. Sorry. Do I care? Are we gyro technicians? Seriously.
Does that
There's
matter?
another
Sorry,
aspect.
do you care? Who cares?
Yes.
If a fiber optic gyro drifts or not. I'm not troubleshooting gyros here.
Yeah, but we're facing it constantly, so shouldn't we just have the knowledge whether they should drift ever or they should never drift naturally?
I'll answer.
Yeah, but what do you mean by drift? You got to explain what you mean by drift because Nathan already explained it.
I'll answer in both sides of the answer. There's two answers. I'll give both. Number one, if yes, in this little logic gate that Arwen's now produced for us, if yes, then Earth turns underneath because that's Coriolis effect. So that shortens flight times. If no, it's not proving anything. So either it shortens flight times if they claim that it's 15 degrees an hour drift because Earth's turning beneath, and that's what's causing the gyro's cage to move around the fixed frame of the gyro, if working perfectly in their claim. If they're saying it's Earth turning beneath the fixed frame of the gyro, spinning, showing a 15 degrees an hour deviation of the cage attached to the non-inertial reference frame that's claimed to be a spinning Earth. That's how you take their claim. So according to them, it's a drift caused by Earth turning beneath the fixed frame. That shortens flight times. That's Coriolis effect. Nothing else
That's a
exhibits
false
this effect.
dichotomy.
So if it doesn't, or it's a mechanical fault or an error, which I don't care about because I'm not a gyro tech, then it's not proving Earth spins. Either shortens flight times or not proving Earth spins.
Even if it would be spinning, it doesn't prove Earth spins. It doesn't prove Earth spins either way anyway.
Correct.
If the Earth would be spinning, it would prove it, but it doesn't because all gyroscopes would spin. They don't. I just want to know, is there an effect that the gyroscope does?
That's a good point to round out on. Exactly. If you had a mechanical gyro with the same principles, again, I'll say it again, gyros don't drift. So we're going to take this example as being a gyro that's mechanically good enough to not exhibit a flaw. Now, this has been done. Rob Durham did this, along with loads of other people. You get a gyro, you spin it up to a sufficient speed, and you stick it on the ground and watch how much it drifts. The cage around the gyro. They don't. Well, if Earth was turning beneath us a non-inertial turning reference frame to exhibit Coriolis deflection in a gyroscope, as was claimed by Foucault with a mechanical gyro in the first instance, then they'd all drift always without exception, and they don't. Arwen's right. Mechanical ones would drift, and they don't. We can demonstrate that. So what? Because it's a £30,000 gyro that does drift? Well, that seems like a fault, because the other ones that are mechanical don't. So that's either a fault or we don't care because it's not proving Earth spins. And if it isn't a fault and it is drifting, even though the mechanical ones don't, then Earth is then claimed to turn underneath to cause Coriolis deflection at 15 degrees an hour in gyros, even though it doesn't happen in the mechanical ones. But if it does, then flight times would be reduced because we'd see drift in the flight. Same as in the gyro, which isn't attached to Earth because it's spinning in a fixed reference frame, like a flight isn't attached to Earth because it's not attached to Earth.
So
We don't see
maybe
that
if
effect
ring
flight
laser
times are
gyroscopes drift after all, then it's not going to be Earth turn. Maybe it is something else that Bob would like to think is ether, which of course is nonsense because it's not even a phenomenon. But I was just wanting to know, do ring laser gyroscopes have these drift ever? And not even why, just do they do that, or is it always a mechanical flaw? That's what I wanted to know in order to get this understanding so I could rebut every time somebody says that perfectly
It's often,
with knowledge.
What's
it's often a human flaw, and that is that most people may
Interpretation.
not give the gyros, whether it be mechanical or light-based, time to get to the right RPMs. If you don't, mechanical and light gyros will both drift if they're not at the correct RPMs. You must give both of them the adequate time. A mechanical gyro within a gyro compass, for instance, takes 4 hours to be spun up to the correct RPMs. A light gyro within a light gyro compass takes half an hour or a bit more, I think. Definitely half an hour, if not a bit more. So it's very likely that people are turning these things on and they're not being spun up to the correct RPMs or not being allowed to settle themselves correctly. And then people are registering something and thinking, look, ether, look, Earth turn, when it's just human fault.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible, and to all of you for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the thanks button and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Programming stream. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
And you're referencing the Earth, aren't you?
Yes. That started with the planes. They were giving planes 1,000 miles an hour or whatever the Earth is claimed that's spinning at whatever speed it is. They would give them the plane right off the bat.
Yeah, but all the effects we see are the exact effects you would see if the Earth was stationary.
I think
That's
it's the
correct.
I think it's the hijacking of real Coriolis effect that does happen, like on a merry-go-round, and they hijack it. So if all we're doing is correcting that, I think we're okay. But to go into saying the Earth does it, yeah, I'm with you all not to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about it is, though, is it's like, speaking about, someone want to talk there from Discord? Sorry.
Negative, continue.
Discord.
No,
Can I give an answer?
Yeah, feel free.
No.
I'd like to play sort of devil's advocate on this point. The ring laser gyro is using the Sagnac effect, which is one of the most accurate ways of any type of accelerometer. So for you to measure movement in 3 axes, the ring laser gyro is the tool of choice because it is so precise. Now, if they're talking about that it's effectively shooting a laser and splitting the light and then recombining it to determine if there was anything causing an impact in how that light recombines at the end point, indicated in a scattering or some kind of a spectrum analysis that tells you whether the light came in out of phase. Now, if there was something moving, like quote unquote Bob claims there to be the ether, and it was causing a retardation of the light moving in one direction, we would be able to pick up a retardation drift of 15 degrees. And that could be what the ring laser gyro is picking up even when lifted off the surface of the Earth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, the fact that Bob... Sorry, Nathan.
No, I'm just agreeing. I'm going, okay.
So if there is, like, if you were swimming against a stream, swimming against a current, and you find that your speed in one direction is always a little bit slower than the other, you would know that there was some kind of force or pressure being applied to you in this direction at this speed. And that is what I think Bob is claiming, that by lifting the gyro up at different altitudes, he registered different speed or different retardation levels and has then assigned it to be some unforeseen current in our sky, or an air current or an ether current that could be retarding the light by a certain amount that's actually measurable.
I agree when you put Bob and retardation together. I agree with that.
Wasn't that Bob's first time ever using the
Oh my
tool?
goodness. All right, listen. Anybody who hasn't watched this needs to watch it. I posted in the main chat. It's the fallout after the documentary where this alleged thank you Bob event occurred. Bob explains his involvement with the gyro and the documentary, involvement with the people in the documentary, and his subsequent tests afterwards, where he took the gyro in question to different altitudes and got different results, which would not be correct if the Earth was a globe and that was what was causing it to happen. So if anybody's unaware of that, they need to get themselves apprised of that before they talk about it any further, because it's really quite, I mean, at this point, being like 2 years removed from when it occurred, no offense to anybody here, but it's just laughable that nobody's aware of all this and able to string it together.
I'm aware of it.
Can you hear me better?
But...
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. I was curious. That is, I mean, you're posting up. My question aren't we talking about Bob's first time ever using it, and has he repeated it since then and gotten the same results, different results?
But look, what I've been trying to say for a few minutes is if he's rising in altitude and getting a different drift, right, then that can't fit in with his ether claim. The claim of ether is that it's moving at 15 degrees per hour, right, in accordance with the movement, or the reason, I don't know if they claim this, as the reason why we have sidereal movement of the stars, 15 degrees per hour. You know,
well, now see, that
like
was the point I was trying to bring up earlier, and saying that the same problem the globe earthers have, that things aren't deviating, would be the same problem Bob would have to assert that claim is true.
Well, you have to insert an impedance gradient. But then you do have to solve the problem of if you're claiming that it's the same cause of why the stars are moving. Although all you have to do is just joint the stars and the lights in the sky from the quote unquote ambient atmosphere, and you solve that problem. This is the problem that a lot of people have, and it's a fair problem, is that they assume that all phenomenon must be synthesized into one explanation, and that explanation must fit all of them. It's a huge problem that the globe has, when it could be, 2 or 3 different things that are completely separate and just coincidental. And claiming to know what they are, like I know because I say so, because I have a affirming the consequent fallacy, right? And some kind of evidence that seems to fit into the back end of the fallacy, right? Which is the if this, then this. So you have the then this, right? But you don't have the if this in the first instance. That logic doesn't prove that. You need that proof somewhere else in order for that to be concluded as true. And yes, Nathan is right that Bob falls into that sometimes, just like the Globers do.
Well, what we can say for certain is that whatever results Bob or whoever else he worked with who owns the gyro, he doesn't own that gyro. It's a fiber optic gyro and someone else in FE Core owns it or something. Whatever results they ever got, it doesn't prove anything. It proves absolutely nothing. They don't know the cause of it. They're just asserting a cause. It doesn't prove anything. There's no proof of what you can be found within that.
If you take the gyro at different altitudes and you get different results, it proves there's different results. And if you have any kind of model that predicts that it should be identical results at all altitudes, then it disproves that model, would it not?
Well, how does it connect to that model?
He's talking about
for example, if you take a clock, right, and you predict, for example, if you take a clock.
Okay, I'll talk in a minute.
Yeah, for example, if you take a clock, right, and it has a radial smoke arm, which tells you the time, you could put the time at any distance from the center, and it would still be the same time. Right? There's no difference in the rotational rate at any part of the spoke. So if it's a mechanical rotation, you could predict precisely what the rotation will be at any distance along that spoke. If it's different, then you got a real problem. It's no longer a mechanical rotation because it's not congruent along the entire spoke. So if you get different readings, then that tells you something, does it not?
Yes, which is what I said a few minutes ago. Right, and I was trying to say there again, if there's a claim that ether moves at 15 degrees an hour, whatever the hell ether is supposed to be, and they're measuring this with a ring laser gyro or fiber optic gyro, but then when they go to different altitudes, they don't get that same 15 degrees per hour. That proves that their claim concerning this ring laser gyro and ether, and it's measuring some kind of ether 15 degrees an hour, rotation is all a load of bullshit. That's what that all proves. It's all bullshit. That's what's proven there.
Either model, right? That would apply to because they both have
maybe,
the same requirement.
Bob updated his rhetoric to include the variance, but regardless of that, his basic assertion was, okay, I did this. I've got different readings. This is absolutely incongruent with it being a mechanical rotation of the Earth. Right? It's still at least plausibly congruent.
Gas goes down?
What?
Are we talking about the same Bob that claims that gas goes down and goes boom, boom? That Bob?
Even a broken clock is
maybe, I don't know. Yeah, listen, arguments are only meritorious on the merits of the arguments. That's
exactly. I don't know what Neil's issue is. What's wrong with when we cite someone like Einstein or NASA? How did you just put it a second ago, John? Even the stop clock's right twice a day? Yeah, it doesn't take anything away. If someone's right about something, give them credit and good for you. Thanks. Thank you.
I agreed. Bob, with retardation goes hand in hand. What's the problem with that?
I don't know what your issue is, Neil. I really don't.
Yeah. It might be personal, but let me ask a question just so I get an understanding. If the stars are moving at 15 degrees an hour and they're in the ether, then how can you have any variance other than 15 degrees, you shouldn't have any variance.
Why do we keep giving him this ether? Everybody says if it's in the
Neil,
We're not giving it to him.
anything. We're questioning variance. So if his fiber optic gyro has variance, and it's not 15 degrees all the time, but the stars are always 15 degrees, and the whole universe, according to Bob, is ether, which he can't prove, then how is there any variance of it?
That was my point.
Well, then
Yeah,
I'm with
that,
you.
look, that's a problem he has to solve for his own worldview. But the point is that he did these things which created a different result than what it would be if it was a radial spoke, meaning that it's pretty much confirms, if it all pans out correctly, that it can't be the turn of the Earth that's causing this to happen. Otherwise, it would be identical. Or some globers argue, well, what if there's something at different altitudes that's changing the readings, but the Earth's still turning? And then you would have to say, well, how would you prove that? So then you just end up with back to circular logic, which requires a fallacy to conclude. So
Hold on, distance doesn't mean
It makes me wonder what would happen from different lines of latitude further from Polaris.
Well, see, the thing is distance shouldn't affect angular, right? So if you're starting at different altitudes, you get different effects. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're right. A broken clock can only be right twice a day if the radial spokes are congruent. Right? They have to follow the same line.
Where is the center point of this clock?
Yeah. You're all going completely off track here, right? There is no evidence to support that either the Earth is moving and rotating or that ether exists. There is no evidence for those two things. So we're talking
We're
around
into making the question, though.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll shut up then.
Yeah, we're just making the
That's not
question.
even what we're talking. That's not. Listen, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, what we're talking about is a globe claimed that this thing is turning because the Earth is turning, and then they claim other things about Coriolis, et cetera, et cetera. And if those things are true, then it seems to me that you should have the same reading no matter the altitude from the Earth. Unless you invoke some weird exotic media that you can't prove, which you have to do with some weird math. Like, you know how they created the Lorentz transform and all these other things? In order to account for this, they're going to have to create some new warped reality. And you notice how every time they find a problem, they just create a new exotic media that warps reality. It's very interesting how that happens.
Yeah, but Nathan had gone over this before a little bit, saying about. Oh, go ahead.
You would have to have the stars turning and the Earth turning, but the air between does not turn. That's what that would be, which is idiocy.
I think he had drawn the parallel between a car tire, having a very large car tire, right? And as you go further from the center, there's a different way that you determine the outside of the tire from the inside of the tire.
Wow, this is getting crazy.
What?
Yeah, but the problem is this, right? Them saying, let's say our opposition. We're not Bob for the minute, just our opposition. Them saying this does this because the Earth is turning, right? Or that does that because the Earth is turning. Or this other thing does this other thing because the Earth is turning. It doesn't matter if all those things do all the things they say that they do. They have not proven Earth is turning. So it doesn't matter what any of these things do. It's on them to prove that the Earth is not stationary. Because all the effects we observe are the effects that we would observe on a stationary Earth. Not whether the gyroscope proves that the Earth is turning or not. No. Does the gyroscope prove the Earth is not stationary? No. Well, that's the end of that then.
Yeah, a drone proves that the Earth is not turning.
Or their argument that the air is
Exactly.
turning with the Earth. I mean, that's their simple answer to it.
But you can see that it's not.
Right, but they'll just argue that it is. I mean, what can you do?
Yeah, but that's not the claim of the Globers.
Well, it's pretty
So
obvious
that's-
what you do. It's pretty obvious what you do. You stop talking to the knuckleheads that don't want to deal with reality and move on because they're zealots. They're never going to give up. They'll do a Heil Hitler to everything, even if it's wrong.
So Bob has repeated this test since his first time ever touching this brand new tool. Or...
Who cares?
Bob just didn't understand gyroscopes enough to realize that he didn't spin up the ring laser gyro enough, apparently. And neither did the filming crew.
The only thing Bob did for me was lead me to Nathan Oakley.
Hey, you
I
did that for
agree
me
with
too.
that. Me
When
too.
he argued the scientific method, it was clear what was going on to everyone but him.
I came a different way. I was listening to Ball Busters and David Weiss was talking about Nathan.
Do you think that this ring laser gyro should be investigated at all?
What's the claim?
I don't think so.
What's the claim?
I think whatever claims that are connected to it, whether it be that
No,
it
I'm
proves
asking
out
this.
rotation.
No, I'm asking this. No, I'm sorry. Why would I investigate something if I don't know the claim? What's the claim?
I'm not sure. The claim is that it proves Earth's rotation or something, right? So, or the
good.
ether rotation. When you want to investigate this device,
But what's the phenomenon?
I'm not sure.
Okay, then how can I investigate if I haven't observed something, seen something?
Well, you can manipulate it, and right? You can manipulate where you bring it and how high you take it.
Well, yeah, but what's the when asked the question, what's the claim? I don't know. When testing something that I don't know what I'm testing, that's not a phenomenon. I haven't observed it. So where do I start?
Yeah, but the phenomena is just inside the ring laser gyro. It's not a phenomena we observe without a ring laser gyro.
That's
no,
correct.
I know. I'm not even talking about. I'm not even there yet. I'm just saying, why would the ring laser gyro come into a conversation? What phenomena was observed to say, hey, you know what? I think if we get a ring laser gyro, we could prove something. What was that?
I don't know what that was.
Okay, well then it doesn't matter what the ring laser gyro you imagine it to do because you don't even know what you're using it for.
Yeah, but it just comes back to the old globe thing, like where they assert the cause and then people look for the effect. Like you look at Einstein, he asserted the cause, right, of this, that, and the other thing, including gravity. But then people went looking for the effect. You're supposed to see the effect first, and then you find the cause. Whereas they give you the cause, and then you go looking for the effects. So you find any effect, whether it be natural or whether it be man-made, and then you start asserting that must be caused by this cause that it was given. And that's what they do. So people try and look for ways, things that are effects that are caused by the rotation of the Earth, without ever knowing that the Earth was never proven to rotate or move in any way.
Well, that's the whole point of my questioning. Why would anyone say a ring laser gyro will give us knowledge when they don't even have the effect that we need the knowledge for?
Isn't it made to, it has the lasers to make sure everything's level with the gyro, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter what it's made out of, what it is. Why didn't someone just say, give me a fork? Why
that's the
that
purpose
ring
of it.
laser instead of a fork? Tell me why.
Because a fork won't give you, the radius that you need to make sure you're flying level or horizontal.
What? Hang on. What am I observing to call for the ring laser gyro?
Maybe mountains in the distance at all, evenly distributed from your center point being where the gyro starts.
Here, let me make it simpler. Piece of steak on a plate in front of me, cut in pieces. Do I use a ring laser gyro to put it to my mouth or a fork?
I would use a fork.
Okay, good. Now, why would I use a ring laser gyro instead of a fork? What am I observing? What's the piece of steak in that analogy that I'm asking for?
Now, I'm flying in a plane, and I want to make sure the things that are well in the distance in front of me or I'm not going to run into them.
So, what does the plane have to help you with that? What does the plane have to help you with that?
Altitude.
Okay. And do we have charts and maps that tell you how high the objects, mountains are in front of you? And do we not have certain elevations that certain planes must be if they're smaller, and the bigger jets must be higher so they don't crash? Isn't all this already figured out?
Maybe it is all mapped out, but if you have this tool that is like radar shooting around you at a specific elevation, which is level because the gyro is telling you you're level, it seems like a handy tool. It's like I don't need a fork anymore. The steak just jumps in my mouth.
Where's the gyro set to level? On the ground or in the air before you take off or after you take off?
I believe on the ground.
Yeah, at least for half an hour, right? To get the spin rate. And then when you go up, it holds that reference plane in free space. Am I right?
You may be. You know more than me on this, it seems.
Well, it has to keep you level. It has to keep you level to a reference frame that you set it on. It can't be set to that reference frame and go up there and use another one. I mean, they have gyros in boats to keep it from going sides on motion. And they're set it at the dock. It's a gyro in the box that's a vacuum, and it's spinning at such crazy speeds. And then when you turn it on in the ocean, when you're being tossed to and fro, it remembers the dock and how still it was and gets you to that. Same thing on the plane, set on the ground. And then you say, okay, this is level to the ground below me.
Right.
And so when you're in the air, it's showing you that same position so that your wings and everything are equal to the horizon, just like it was on the ground, flat Earth.
Right. So you're saying there's no point in this tool?
No, I'm trying to figure out what observation, other than the use of it for flying and steadiness of the horizon. What's this ether crap? Who saw ether for the ring laser gyro?
Well, I believe they are saying that they are recording it moving on its own, like drift, right? That's what the claim is, right?
Oh, then it's broken. Take it back and get better ones.
How is possible that we make some kind of instrument and it is not purple for something, but then we realize later that instrument itself it's showing something what we even in the beginning didn't make to work.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it could I'm not saying don't check out the tool and the parts of it. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, that would be the first thing you should do.
Because it will be like this. It will say for sure everywhere. The gyroscope, it's an instrument which it's used for proving the Earth rotation.
That's because like the same thing as. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
That will be like a purpose for that instrument. It is something made there inside that it's measuring something, but that's not the case.
I think Brian said it best.
The same thing as questioning the compass. I mean, we can question the compass, like, which I'm starting to do a little bit, but yeah, I mean, or you can agree with it.
Well, there's a joke about questioning the compass from one backpacker to another. Get lost.
I just have a quick announcement to make.
But listen, the compass is made to show to show north and south. Compass is made like that. What would happen if in one moment start to show east and west?
Yeah, it'd be very strange. Yep. Well, this is the basic. This is where I'm starting to question the compass or something else, right? So are east and west a straight line?
Oh.
The only
We don't
know.
North. We don't know.
It would
east
be
and west
testable.
perpendicular to north and south?
Not in navigation, as far as I know.
That depends.
Because when you set your compass to east and you just follow that course, you will not remain east if you don't adjust for the north every so often.
Right.
That
With the
happens
magnetic
east and west is straight.
That's with the magnetic.
The only place that it would be considered a straight line of perpendicular.
It's on a globe.
North and south would be on the globe, and it would be at the equator.
Yeah, you have to identify the context what you're in. On a globe, that's true, what you just said. On a sphere, yeah. East and west are straight.
All right. So you think east and west are well? It depends on what you're talking about. I mean, just in general, are east and west, regardless of the model, or is east and west a straight line?
Yes.
Okay.
Ha.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Well,
perpendicular to north.
Well, you have to go back to what context that you're in. Oh my God.
Let them talk.
What do you got to say, Arwen?
Welcome to a looping Earth.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
No need.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but I've come to the conclusion that north and south is the only straight line.
Why? I just told you they were straight lines, east and west. Right?
You did say that, yeah.
Well,
yeah, 270 degrees. Right? That's west.
So it's perpendicular to north and south?
Correct.
So that curved line, or it's a straight line?
I just said it was straight. Both are straight.
Yeah. Okay. So if I walk in a straight line east, then I'll constantly stay perpendicular to north.
It depends. Yes.
Okay.
But what are you using for east? Are you using the magnetic compass?
Yeah, just the compass. Yeah. Well, if I use the compass, right, and it's east is a straight line. I set my heading to east. I look at it. I put the compass in my pocket and I walk east. It's a straight line, and you're saying it's always going to be straight, and it's always going to be perpendicular to north and south.
It won't be.
Okay.
Yep. It depends on what context you're in. If you have magnetic north, actually, I could say something here, but I won't, because that'll just get everyone off on a tangent. Maybe I will one day. It depends on where your the magnetic pole is, right?
Right.
Correct.
So everything's relative to north.
To the magnetic pole, because you're using magnetic, right?
With the compass, yes.
Yeah. Depends on where magnetic north is. It depends on where that pole is, because everything's in reference to that, correct?
With the compass, yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Well,
I just don't see
technically,
where east and west is a straight line. Yeah.
Well, east and west on the magnetic scale are kind of relative in that sense, right? Unless you're going to say east and west on a celestial scale, but north magnetically, yeah, then it's going to be different.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm doubting the tool, the compass, or I'm doubting the east and west, understanding of east and west as a straight line.
I think maybe you're caught in the situation where horizontally.
He's
it's a
building up
shape.
to his point with the music.
I was still talking. If you're holding a compass, it's a circular shape, 360, and where you're at, John is right. It's going to be straight. But if you move and that magnetic pole gives you that declination, the magnetic declination to that other region where you got to set it to the pole properly. Until you do that, then you're going to be off a bit.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is east and west are circles, but then the assertion that east and west are straight lines. So that's where I'm at.
No,
You're just
they're
off
two
because
different fields.
you're
There's
just
the
off because you're
celestial
not defining
orientation and the magnetic one.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't want to get. I didn't want to go
Hold
too
on,
deep.
Owen got him first.
Yeah,
that's the problem I have.
it's just a compass. A compass it doesn't have any feelings. It doesn't have any intent. It's just a compass. So your claim that you're questioning the compass is absolutely ludicrous. In other words.
Yep. The problem is he's mixing in two different fields of orientation. He's mixing in celestial orientation and magnetic orientation.
You got it. Correct.
And magnetically, there is east and west are relative. They're very relative, right? It's not going to be straight lines. It gets warped because it's a magnetic orientation. Celestial-wise, however, it is all very straightforward.
How can you go east in a straight line and still hold north? You can use the compass, because the compass just shows like a clock facing a clock. But to follow east, you're going to have to go around north, aren't you? Because north is your only reference. You don't have a magnetic anything else.
Right, so east and west are relative to wherever north is on the compass. That's why they're relative magnetically. But on the celestial system, they're not.
Yeah, if I'm plotting it on a map, right, and I'm plotting 270 degrees, my line's not curving. Tell you that much.
Yeah, if you're plotting it from the North Pole, like a straight line from the North Pole.
No, I'm not plotting it from the North Pole. No, Heck no. Because I changed over to true north. That's what I did. Because, like Arwen said, you're changing up your standard, your framework of what you're on what you're using, and you're convoluting those two.
Right, the orientation mechanisms. Magnetic orientation, celestial orientation.
Sorry, I'm trying to talk while I'm eating breakfast. Sorry about that. You please continue.
I got an announcement to make before we not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday is when that debate's supposed to happen at 2 p.m. Eastern time, I believe.
What channel?
Where?
And
with Ruhif?
I said when, not who. When?
2 p.m. Not this Tuesday, but the next, the 14th, I think, or the 12th.
Eastern time?
Yeah.
Of all the times you guys are going to pick, that's right exactly when my show comes on.
No, you come on 2 p.m. Central, don't you?
1 p.m. Central.
All right, I'll change it. Sorry.
Don't let it happen again. I'm just joking.
Well, it shouldn't be a long show.
No, it's not going to be that long.
Good one, Ted. It should end real quick.
I mean, they have to affirm an angle measurement first, which they need a flat plane baseline, and it's over right there. That's where John's got it.
Yeah, but the meaning of words may come into play.
No, you're going to see obfuscation, delay tactics, and John's going to say, well, how'd you get that angle in the first place?
Excuse me, the definition.
Yeah, but he's had a lot of he's had a lot of practice against George on that. Getting around that.
Well, he's got his kitchen. He says, well, look, I can make my kitchen into a globe real easy. Here's how I did it. This is how you guys did it. You need a flat plane to start with.
Well, and even after you get the angle, then he's going to apply a model. It's a celestial sphere model of a flat Earth. That'll be his next step. After he gets the angles from a flat Earth, then he's going to put it in a model of a flat Earth. It's asserting it's a globe after he does that will be the problem for him.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Wait a second. How long? When is this debate? Two weeks from Tuesday?
The 12th. I should have just said the date. The 12th.
So it's 12 July, right?
Yeah.
Boy, this is fucking painful. So 12 July. Where is the debate? Who are you debating?
July 12th, we're going to change the time. Ruhif, and I think he said it on McToon's channel.
You're going to go debate Ruhif on McToon's channel. So you got a booger eater, McToon, and then you got Ruhif that couldn't spell cat if you spotted him, the C and the A. And you're going to go debate these guys?
No, John, it won't be a debate, no.
What will it be then?
It'll be them dodging
destruction
and acting crazy for about an hour while I point out that they're using a flat Earth angle measurements for a flat Earth model. And I'm just going to stick to that.
Well, then yeah, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do, right? Right? Show an elevation angle on a curved adjacent. That's all you need to do. And then shut up. Just say it again. Then say it again.
And if you don't want to keep saying that, just play McToon's video of him admitting what an angle is.
Say it again, Sam.
It'll probably take longer to define our terms than it will be for the actual debate. Yeah.
But definitions are meaningless to him.
That's what I said.
You got to remind him of that right away.
So you want that? Where are you at, John? You and Master B?
Yes, sir.
So if you're getting him, if you're wanting Ruhif to define something, then you can't. It's the acme of foolishness, because he stated rather vehemently that definitions are meaningless. So what are you going to do then? That's about it.
Words don't have any
Yeah,
meaning,
your game
right?
plan needs to go a little bit deeper. I'm sure. I've talked to Ruhif a bunch, and your game plan has to go a little deeper than that.
Really?
Why? Why not take the win?
Not that he has great points. It's just the way that he speaks and the way that he'll spin things. You got to have a little bit more.
Well, he's going to have to spin up a damn elevation angle from a curved baseline. That's what he's going to have to spin up.
He's going to have to do one of two things. One, he's either going to have to assert you can get an angle from a curved baseline, or he's going to have to contradict the model. So which one is he going to choose?
He's going to say yes. He's going to say yes. That's exactly how you do it. And now let me continue and explain to the audience of why I'm right.
No, what he's going to do is he's going to try and deny reality. That's what
Brian, what did that guy just say? He said after that he's going to spin. No, there's no after that. There's you. Oh, so you admit that all the angle measurements you got to create your globe, like I did my kitchen, came from a flat baseline. So you need a flat plane.
Of course, from an elevation. Yes, from an elevation.
Okay, so it's over. Debate over. Debate's over.
And he'll continue.
Right.
All right.
There's not been enough focus on it for them to. I don't think they get it. Like QE said, I don't think they understand what they're actually saying when they speak, and I just want to help them with that. So it's not a debate.
No, it's not a debate because right off from the get-go, he's conceding that it's a flat Earth.
Right. What are you going to do? Concede it's a flat Earth and then go on to argue how curved it is?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't make sense.
I've heard him do it. I mean, I've heard him do it.
Well, then that's when I'll laugh at him. I mean, what else do I need to do?
I don't know. That's why I'm not in that position. I'm just.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Hang on.
Hang on. He said he's not in the position. Let me ask this gentleman. If you know that an elevation angle can only be done with a flat baseline, and that means Earth is flat, and someone says, well, yeah, that's how I started, but let me tell you why I justify it. You're going to sit there 2 hours and say, I don't know what to say?
Yeah. So yeah. So then when I correct for dip angle, it shows exactly what the globe predicts.
What's dip angle?
Dip angle.
No, yeah.
Hang on.
I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just repeating what Ruhif says all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how he says it.
Yeah.
All right.
When I pull out my theodolite, I can predict exactly what the globe tells me I should predict with refraction.
Look, we had Hoymeyer.
Say that again. Sorry. So what did he just say? What did you just say about the very last thing he said?
He says, yeah, when you calculate refraction, it is exactly as the globe predicts from an elevated angle. This is what we should see.
Yeah. See, you know what?
1 degree every 69 miles.
Sorry, Tim. You know where the problem lies. The problem lies in Ruhif speaking to people. I don't mean this in any derogatory fashion or insultory way, but Ruhif pulls that stuff on people that he knows don't have the same information he has on the subjects. He doesn't put it on us because he can't do it, because we have information that destroys that. Now, you also have information that destroys it. It's just that you don't have all the tertiary information that goes around that. It's very simple. You can't have an elevation angle with a horizontal baseline that goes for hundreds and thousands of miles on a curved surface. That's the basics of it. Can't have that. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that goes with that, outside of that, and that's the stuff where he's working with. He's not working with that baseline. He's working on the outside, and he's adding in global refraction and all this other nonsense. Where's the radius? Where's its value? Where's the history of this?
No.
He's working on the outside. Hang on, 10, please. He's working on the outside, doing his best to use trickery. But he doesn't come in here and do that because he knows it won't work.
All right. There is no global refraction. He can't add it in. Even Andrew Thomas Young says all his refraction studies, calculations came from a flat plane. In celestial navigation, refraction is defined. Pressure and temperature, water temperature and air temperature meeting at a point at the horizon. That's where's 7/6R? Where is curvature? It's not in there. That's the refraction for celestial navigation.
Well, that's not refraction either.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying it's not even what he says. It's what they put in there saying what happens at the density of the air. That's all.
Yeah, I got you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not what, because if you're going to tie it to celestial navigation, then you better find out how celestial navigation, right or wrong, says refraction is. Well, it's not what Ruhif says. So he just shows you he hasn't studied and he just wants to push a globe curve on you. The other one is dip, define dip. Well, we did this with Hoymeyer. I mean, you got to listen to that show. I think Nathan's going to air it today. He's got an 8-minute piece on it.
Tomorrow, and he didn't cut out the rubber ducky part. Nathan!
What? I'd said it came after the bit I'd trimmed out. There's plenty more meat on that bone.
You did say
the
that.
show hasn't even come out yet.
Yeah, you did say that. But still, I was highly disappointed.
Can anyone show me the dip angle in the celestial sphere model?
Your mic's making a funny noise, by the way, John.
I thought it was me.
I'm just saying. You got. I would just you probably already have more. I'm sure you have more knowledge.
More? He doesn't need more.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
He doesn't.
I'm gonna tune in.
No, just keep stressing. Have him get AutoCAD, have him pull up AutoCAD, and show a triangle on the sphere, and have him try to compute the angle between the hypotenuse and the adjacent, and see what happens for the whole audience. That's what, John. That's what you need to do.
Yes, sir. Well, the other thing is the dip angle claim. He's going to need to demonstrate that on the celestial sphere model. He'll never do it.
No, don't go to the dip angle just yet. Don't go to the dip angle just yet.
Oh yeah, I know the curved adjacent will be first, but after I
you
make fun
just
of him
do what
enough
you
with
do.
that,
How about that? You just do what you do. How about that?
Well, the angle measurement has to be first. The angle measurement has to be first because that's what everything else is going to be based on.
It has
he's going to lose right there.
It has to be first, second, third, fourth, 50th, 55th, 87th. You don't move away from it.
Well, the only reason I will move away from it is to point out that the model he's using is actually a flat Earth model. That there is no such thing.
Well, you could do that, but that's based on the angle measurement. So you're not straying away all that much.
Right. So, like, if he tries to assert dip angle to a physical geometric horizon, demonstrate that in the celestial sphere model.
Here we go with the dip angle. Why go to dip angle?
But it will be Rohit that will go there, not John.
Right. I'm
if
just
he goes to dip angle, have him define all the attributes of his dip angle, and then hit him with the rubber ducky life preserver.
It's not if, it's when he goes to dip angle.
Well, that is in essence what I was talking about, because the angle is coming from the ground to the celestial point out to the horizon and past it in the celestial sphere model. So it's similar to that.
So Roofy, he's listening. He's listening now. We're giving him our tactics. So you're well prepared almost 2 weeks in advance to what you're going to get. That's how confident. I don't have any problems in telling you about the tactics, right? Because you're toast. And we all know it. You're just too stupid to realize it. And tell McBooger Eater to wipe that stuff off the corner of his lips.
Who's moderating? Who's moderating?
I'll have to. Hold on a sec. I'll have to get get a concrete time this afternoon, and tomorrow I'll have it. I was just running it by everybody in a kind of preliminary way, but I wasn't taking into account your show starting at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so we'll change that up.
Thank you.
I just want to say that there's no tactics needed. You don't need tactics. You just be honest. Tell the truth. Just need honesty. No tactics. He needs tactics. We don't need tactics.
Well, telling the truth is kind of a tactic in and of itself, isn't it?
Well, you don't have to think about it. You just say it as you see it. You're stating how it works and how it's described to work and what it actually does and what that requires. That's all you're doing.
That sounds like a tactic to me, Brian.
Yeah,
a good one.
I'm sure you'll do well. I'm sure you'll do really well. But yeah, preparation is good for anything. Yeah.
Well,
You could define it as a tactic, but definitions are meaningless.
It's not that John's going to do really well. There is no debate.
Thank you, Tim. Exactly.
My goodness, the guy's going to lose right from the get-go, and then he's going to start defining things that he previously said definitions don't mean anything. People are going to realize he needs a straitjacket and Bellevue. My goodness, there is no debate.
Yeah. Did you get that, Master B, John? See if you can't post that up.
Yeah, I will. I posted it in Master B yesterday to see if anybody had any problems, but it was a huge response that he gave me, so I can see why nobody bothered reading it.
No,
took
I
him
don't
like,
I don't read anything from Rufy. No.
but yeah, it was like he sent me a novel.
Of
So yeah,
course.
I'll try to trim out the
For a guy who
coherent
claims
Of
that
course, you know
words
what
have
they're
no
going to do. They're
meanings.
going to write herring fallacy to death. They're going to try to get away. I'm not giving you any clues. You already know what's going to happen. They're going to try to get away from the elevation angle, the first step. Now, that's not the first step. Another tactic you could do is go from the absolute beginning start point. So you're out at sea, you're lost. What do you do step by step? In about the third or fourth step, you're going to pull out that sextant. I'm sorry, the sextant's already going to be pulled out after you do your corrections, right? Index correction, right? Then the next thing you're going to do, you're going to look through that sextant. Then it's over, right? It's another, I ain't going to say tactic, but it's another way you could do it. That would be clear to audience members, correct?
Yeah, I guess that's exactly the thing about this. Like the point I really want to drive home is that it's not a debatable issue, you know. And
yeah,
when
but
Jim
you're in
Panda,
a debate,
right? Well, when Jim Panda tried to argue with me on this, he realized the points I was making, so he started screaming and talking about how he's not going to debate me if I'm just going to keep doing that. So.
Hold on, talk us through that. What do you mean? So what points did you raise in response to what, or how did it get to the point where he's saying, if you provide me with a presumably flat earth course of action only, I'm not going to tolerate it? Is that what you're saying he did?
Well, I wasn't arguing with him. I was just stating, you know, that an angle requires two straight lines, and when you apply those lines to any kind of model, it'll have to be a flat earth model. And he said, I'm not going to argue with you on geometric principle and debunking my model. And that was it. He wouldn't talk to me no more.
that's Rhodes Scholar-esque. Ask him to define geometry. I'll bet you that crayon muncher doesn't even know what the fuck it is.
No, yeah, you're probably right.
He gets bent out of shape when he tries.
But, you know, he was trying to find a point of controversy to argue with me, and I wasn't allowing it. And that's all I'm going to do. Like, why enter into an argument with him when it's already agreed upon?
Remind me what's already agreed upon, John?
That angles are straight lines, and that all angles are taken from the surface of Earth to create the celestial sphere model. Those 2 points aren't in contention.
Watch the. I've seen this a couple times, and mainly in chat skanking, that they get confused between to and from, like an elevation angle from, or an angle to. So the from and to things. Watch that little okey doke.
John's way ahead
Listen
of you on that
for
score. Yeah, John's definitely way ahead of you on that score.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when the black swan becomes interesting, because they're trying to get an angle to a curved baseline, and they can't even do that after the black swan. So that's funny, you know. But yeah, it won't go that far. No.
Yeah, angle 2 is their claim of tangency, which requires a straight line they don't have. Angle from a curved baseline is impossible. So they're screwed either way. It doesn't make much difference. But I know what you're saying. If you don't realise that they're suddenly switching up from a curve and suddenly they're inserting a tangent without saying the word when they say to a curve, it's like, all right, straight. That's what Humar fell apart on, because he's saying that basically I'm drawing to a point in the distance. It's like if you're drawing it to a point in the distance to do it, and anything to do with an angle, then that's a straight line. Well, in the sphere model, that's a geometric horizon. That's the one you can't see. Again, it doesn't matter which way they turn, really. They're screwed every which way because Earth's flat, and that's how this is done.
Yes, sir.
But the to and from thing, yeah, John's had that up on the show a couple of times, made it a good point and nice and concise for the audience. So I'm 100% certain he's way ahead of the game in that regard.
Are you saying that I'm not keeping up with the flat Earth debate?
No, I'm just saying that John's way ahead of you in that regard.
I mean,
go ahead.
The biggest thing about this is that it's not a debate anymore, you know, and I want to highlight that.
Sweet.
Well, how
by the
could
way,
it be
it
a
never
debate
was.
when both sides come in with the same starting point?
Oh, by the way, it never was a debate.
Well, if you consider that we lack the information as a society, not in the field that, like, in this hyper-specific arena we're in at the moment, as a society, it was because people lack the information, the correct information.
That society as a whole.
Yes, sir. Society as a whole. Yes.
Society as a whole. Well, they're all crayon munchers.
Well, yeah, that's why they believe in a sphere. Yes.
Yeah, it's never been a debate. Everyone knows that. I knew that the moment I stepped out here. It was all over. The last 5 or 6 years, that's just barely palpable background noise. It's been fun.
Do you think the way that people's reacted to the information has changed the way you view people, John?
I didn't hear you, John. Go ahead, say it again.
Do you think the way that people's reacted to the information you've provided them with has changed your viewpoint on people?
No, most people don't get it. Most of the things that I've come out with, they don't get it. And it's not the complicated stuff, it's the really simple stuff. So no. As a whole, we're talking vague in general, right?
Yeah, in general, because, you know, we are a small subset of society, and the anti-flat earthers are even a smaller subset of that society. So, you know, it's...
Oh, it's a bell curve.
People react.
You don't get too far away from the bell curve with when you're talking about groups of people, right? So that's a little bit too vague. I mean, there's a lot of people that picked up on it real quick, and they're just the silent masses. But a lot of people haven't picked up on. I mean, come on. Most don't even know what the black swan argument is after it's almost 2.5 years now. They don't even know what the argument is. What can you say to that?
Well, isn't that because they're repositioning it through a filter that already exists so that it says something else than what it does?
Yeah, but that still doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It's nothing inherent to the argument itself. It's only a couple sentences.
Right, it's a flaw in people. It's not exactly
Yeah, but the implications are massive. So it's for newbies, it's much more like trying to keep a ball underwater, right? You got to keep pushing it. They don't want to take the effort, so they just let it float and they forget about it, right? It's not that they don't accept it. It's just that they're going to kind of forget about it because it's pretty heavy and it is complicated for the average person.
It seems, in my experience in assessing this question, we're in the matrix where you've got the people who think everything is reality when it's not. And those are friends and family members who won't discuss the issue with us because they've been programmed to think, oh, they're conspirators, they're crazy. Then you meet the so-called Agent Smith types in this field, which is the anti-flat earthers. And there's a variation of them. And they're not so smart Agent Smiths either because they agree with us. At the same time, they fight us. And then we took the red pill and said, wait a minute, what's going on here?
The Black Swan argument is actually over. Well, I kind of stepped in there first now. 1 second. The Black Swan argument is actually over 2.5 years old because it came out start of 2020. This is now past June into the start of July 2022. So it's over 2.5 years. But the real point I'm making is the Black Swan argument, what got in the way of that was and is our opposition conflating and confusing the matter with the word refraction and confusing everybody, and then people, even people who are flat earthers and on our side, end up thinking it's a refraction argument instead of understanding the argument for what it was, which is as soon as they say refraction, it's over. It means it's not geometric. That is the simplicity of it. Requires the understanding of the original claim. And if you start getting into a refraction argument, it means you don't understand the original globe claim. Or you're forgetting it or something.
I just wanted to get into 10th Man's analogy with agents from the Matrix, right? Well, agents from the Matrix aren't really smart. They're very systematic, they're very driven, they're very focused, they have systems, right, to follow, but they don't think a lot. They're not very creative. They just follow the program, the system, and do what they came to do, basically. But they're not smart, they're not creative.
I'd said not so smart.
We have, hold on,
exactly.
hold
So
on.
I
We
agree
have
with
somebody
you.
in chat skank. Hold on. We have somebody in chat skank. Grenade Gorbowicz. Come off mute. He just posted a definition of level from Merriam-Webster. The definition is having no part higher than another, conforming to the curvature of the liquid parts of the Earth's surface. He has conforming to the curvature of the Earth highlighted. Hey, Gorbowicz, come off mute. Do it. You friggin' idiot. You forgot the first part of the sentence. It says having no part higher than another. Define curvature. Oh, Grenade Gorbowicz. I'm going to drop an ICBM on your head, you crayon munching clueless clown.
Incoming.
Define curvature, Grenade. You got 10 seconds. 5.
Should be explosive.
Get to your bunkers.
Bye. Continue.
Frag out.
You kind of put a kibosh on the mood there, John. But it's a fair point. His citation literally said having no part higher than the other.
But if you scroll down 6 definitions, they have a reification of their gravity by saying it's some kind of force that keeps, here it is, equal potential, being in a field of force at points of equal potential, gravitational, magnetic, electrical, set of lines and surfaces. Does that make any sense to anybody?
No. But with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
lovely day.